The July 25th, 2022 meeting of the California Board of Barbering and Cosmetology. Welcome everyone, board members and public alike and other officials participating in this. And Christy reminded me this morning also that this may be our last board meeting at this facility because when the governor appoints the other few appointments to this board, we're outgrowing the podium. So we go to an even bigger area next time. So
Probably be across the parking lot.
Okay, good. All right. Let me call the meeting to order now, and let's start with a roll call. Marcy?
Steve Weeks.
Present.
Callie Pham. Present. Megan Ellis. Present. Tanya Fairley.
Present.
Reese Isbell.
Here.
Yolanda Jimenez. Absent. Derek Matos.
Here.
Danielle Munoz.
Present.
All right, and we have a quorum for this meeting, and let's move to our business at hand, and that's the board will meet in closed session now to deliberate on a disciplinary matter. And
Sorry.
I'm sorry, what?
No closed session. Number 2. We're moving right and turning it over to the judge.
Right.
I'm sorry.
Yes, I was going to turn it over to her. Yeah, exactly.
Sorry.
Yeah, so I'm going to turn it over to our administrative judge, and you can take over the chair on this.
Great. Thank you, President Weeks. I'm going to go ahead and get on the record for this morning's petition hearing. And this matter is being recorded. We are here this morning for the petition for reinstatement of Robert Sumler. This matter is being heard before the Board of Barbering and Cosmetology. There's only one sole petition this morning. My name is Danette Brown, and I am an administrative law judge with the Office of Administrative Hearings assigned to hear this matter. And because we are on a hearing record, I'm going to ask again if all the members of the board could please identify themselves for the record, starting with your first and then your last name. And then President Weeks, if you could establish that a quorum is present. So can we go down the line of the board members?
Yes, this is Steve Weeks, President.
This is Callie Mayfair, Vice President.
Derek Matos, industry member.
Megan Ellis, Public Member.
Reese Isbell, public member.
Tanya Fairley, industry member.
Danielle Munoz, Public Member.
And now we have a quorum for the administrative procedure.
Thank you, President Weeks. All right. And again, I stated earlier that this is the matter of the petition for reinstatement of Robert Sumler. This is agency case number 1002-022-011-876 and OAH number 2022-060-697. May I take the appearance of the Deputy Attorney General, please?
Thank you. Good morning. This is Patricia Weber-Heim appearing on... Yes, it is on. Here, I'll move it closer. I apologize. Good morning. This is Patricia Weber-Heim appearing on behalf of the people of the state of California pursuant to Government Code Section 11522.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Attorney General. And Mr. Sumler, if you could please state and spell your name for the record.
Good morning. My name is Robert Sumler, R-O-B-E-R-T-S-U-M-L-E-R.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Sumler. Okay. Just a little bit of housekeeping here. Mr. Sumler, are you choosing to represent yourself here this morning?
Yes.
Okay. And so when we were off the record before this hearing, I explained, the process, the procedures in this matter. And I'm just going to go ahead and repeat that quickly for the record. So in this proceeding, the board is concerned with your rehabilitation since your license was revoked. The Deputy Attorney General, Ms. Hine, will proceed first to provide an orientation regarding this matter, kind of like a background history of what has happened and why we are here today. After that, you have the right, Mr. Sumler, to make a presentation of your case. You can testify on your own behalf. You can have witnesses testify for you. But in essence, the testimony should encompass why you believe that your license should be reinstated. And again, the board is concerned with rehabilitation, and what I mean by that is, what activities have you engaged in since the time that your license was revoked up till now? I'm sure the board is curious to hear what you've been up to. You are reminded that the board has had the benefit of reading your petition packet, so you don't have to go through all of the documents in there necessarily, unless, of course, you want to point something that is important to you, if you want to point that out to the board. So you don't have to repeat anything in the packet. So after the hearing, the board at some point will go into a closed session to deliberate, and what happens there is the room is vacated and the board remains, and they'll deliberate about your petition. So you won't get a decision today. I've got 30 days within which to draft a decision, and that will go to the board, and then from there they will review it, and then at some point it'll get signed, or they have the option also to reject the decision as well. But in essence, for this type of proceeding, I'm writing the decision on behalf of the board, and Mr. Weeks will sign that decision and get it out to you, with most likely beyond 30 days.
Okay.
Okay, do you have any questions at all about the proceeding or process this morning?
No.
Okay, and if you do, please, by all means, just raise your hand, ask the question, and I'll see if I can guide you through the process, okay?
Okay, thank you.
All right. So before we get moving, I have a tendency to kind of forget sometimes to administer the oath, so I'm going to do that at this time. So if you could please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, sir?
I do.
Thank you very much. Okay, now I'm going to hand it over to Ms. Heim for an orientation of this matter.
Thank you. I will first begin by introducing the exhibits into evidence. I will read first the exhibits that have been prepared by our office, and then I will note the exhibits that have been provided to the board, which are the same exhibits, however, they are in slightly different order. Both copies have been provided to the petitioner, and the memorandum to the board is for certain to the board, but only, I believe, the ALJ has both copies of the exhibits. Pre-marked in the Attorney General's packet as Exhibit 1 are the jurisdictional documents, which include the petition for reinstatement without attachments, which is dated February 2nd, 2022, and the notice of hearing, which was prepared by the Attorney General's office and served to the petitioner's address of record on June 27th, 2022. At this time, I would move to admit Exhibit 1 into evidence.
Mr. Sumler, do you have any objection to the document that Ms. Heim just described?
No.
Okay, so Exhibit 1 is admitted.
Thank you. Pre-marked as Exhibit 2 is the license certification history for the petitioner. And this time I would move to admit Exhibit 2 into evidence.
Any objections, Mr. Sumler?
No.
Exhibit 2 is admitted.
Thank you. Pre-marked as Exhibit 3 is the petition for reinstatement, which was signed under penalty of perjury on February 2nd, 2022, and contains attachments including Mr. Sumler's typewritten narrative statement, copies of a check to the Department of Consumer Affairs and the Franchise Tax Board, noticing that payment was completed for complaint number 1002018002246, and again the cashier's check, which was for $300 to the Franchise Tax Board. This is followed by petitioner's COVID vaccination card, 14 pages of letters of reference, an earnings statement for Rhodey, Inc., a typewritten list of employment from 2017 through 2022, a handwritten list of hours completed at the Catholic Church, and a handwritten letter of support, which is dated December 1st of 2021. At this time, I would move Exhibit 3 into evidence.
Any objections, Mr. Sumler, to Exhibit 3?
No.
Exhibit 3 is admitted.
Thank you. Pre-marked as Exhibit 4 is the decision and order in case number BC 2015-8240, effective May 18th, 2016, which placed petitioner's establishment license number A 286301 and barber license number B 68079 on probation. This is with the attached accusation, which is dated February 12th, 2016. At this time, I would move Exhibit 4 into evidence.
Any objections, Mr. Sumler, to Exhibit 4?
No.
Exhibit 4 is admitted.
Thank you. And finally, pre-marked as Exhibit 5 is the decision and order in case number BC 2015-8240, effective April 27th, 2018, revoking petitioner's establishment license and barber license. At this time, I would move to admit Exhibit 5 into evidence.
Any objections, Mr. Sumler, to Exhibit 5?
No.
Exhibit 5 is admitted.
Thank you. And now, at this time, I will note that the memorandum that was provided to the board members includes the following exhibits, which were previously admitted into evidence and are in a slightly different order. They include Enclosure 1, which is a case summary, Enclosure 2, the petition for reinstatement, 3 is the supporting documents, 4 is the decision and order from 2016 in case number BC 2015-8240. 5 is the stipulated settlement and disciplinary order in the same case number. 6 is the accusation. 7 is the decision and order from 2018 revoking the licenses. 8 is the proposed decision from this case. 9 is the petition to revoke probation. 10 includes the license certification. 11 is the hearing confirmation form notifying him that the hearing would take place today, July 25th, 2022 at 10 a.m. And finally, 12 is the notice of hearing, which was served to his address of record. If needed, I would move these exhibits also into evidence.
Okay, they appear to be the same exhibits that we've already gone through, exhibits 1 through 5, and then there's some additional jurisdictional
Correct.
documents, so I'll just mark those as jurisdictional.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
At this time, I will read a summary of the case. On or around June 26, 2013, the board issued establishment license number A 286301 to Robert Sumler, petitioner in this matter, doing business as Bob's Barbershop. And on June 25th, 1992, the board issued barber license number B 68079 to Mr. Sumler. Pursuant to a stipulated settlement and order, the licenses were placed on 4 years probation effective May 18th, 2016. The terms of his probation included a 20-day suspension, $1,680 in cost recovery, quarterly reports, 80 hours of remedial education, payment of fines from the previous citations. The matters prior to the probation and subsequent revocation of his licenses included citation number CF 2012-826-353, issued on August 7, 2012, for violations of Business and Professions Code sections 7317 subdivision A, unlicensed establishment, 7317 subdivision B, unlicensed activity, 7348, no licensee in charge, and violations of the California Code of Regulations, Title 16, Sections 905, no message to consumer information posted, 979, disinfecting of non-electrical tools, and 994, cleanliness and repair. This citation included an $1,800 fine. Citation number CF 2012-806889 was issued on December 7th, 2012 for violations of Business and Professions Code Section 7317A, unlicensed establishment, 7317B, unlicensed activity, 7348, no licensee in charge, and a violation of CCR Title 16, Sections 905, no message to consumer information posted. This citation included a $1,250 fine. Citation number CF 2013-821342 was issued on April 23, 2013 for violations of Business and Professions Code Sections 7317A, unlicensed establishment, 7317B, unlicensed activity, 7348, no licensee in charge, and violations of CCR Title 16, Sections 987, towels in unsanitary condition, and 990, headrests and treatment tables in unsanitary condition. This citation included a $2,300 fine. Citation number CF 2013-840119 was issued on July 5, 2013 for violations of Business and Professions Code Section 7317A, unlicensed establishment, and violations of CCR Title 16, Sections 904D, no photo ID available, 965, display of licenses, 979, disinfecting non-electrical tools, 987, towels in unsanitary condition, 990, headrests and treatment tables in unsanitary condition, and 994, cleanliness and repair. This citation included a $2,300 fine. And finally, citation number 100-201-400-4596, issued on January 15, 2014, for violations of CCR Title 16, Sections 904D, no photo ID available, 979, disinfecting of non-electrical tools, 988, containers labeled and cosmetics, and 994, cleanliness and repair. This citation included a $500 fine. Effective April 27, 2018, petitioners' licenses were revoked. The revocation of petitioner's establishment and barber licenses were based on his failure to comply with the terms of his probation, specifically that he failed to submit quarterly reports of compliance in a timely manner, had not paid the outstanding citation fines or cost recovery owed to the board, failed to post suspension signs at his establishment, and failed to complete the remedial education courses ordered by the board. He also failed to maintain valid licenses or serve the 20-day suspension as required. On February 2nd, 2022, petitioner submitted his petition for reinstatement of his barber license. The establishment, Bob's Barbershop, is currently operating under license number A321108 with Arthur Sumler as the owner. The establishment license was issued on July 10, 2018, and expires on July 31st, 2024, unless renewed. A notice of hearing was served to petitioner's address of record on June 27, 2022. And now, because the burden is on Mr. Sumler to show that reinstatement of his license is warranted, specifically the barber license, I reserve the right to question him after his statement. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Horn. All right, at this time, Mr. Sumler, it's your opportunity to testify on your own behalf. I've already put you under oath, so you are good to go. So what is it you would like to say to the board this morning?
Good morning. I would like to say, first, I'm thankful for having a chance to present what I've been doing and me getting my license back, hopefully, to you guys this morning. At first, I was upset with all this because there was so much going on in my life. But now I'm thankful because if it wasn't for this, I wouldn't have known that I was going in a downward spiral. And my life has been changed. Before, I would think, because my mother was real sick, and I would think, oh, I'm going through all this, so I basically had excuse. But I don't believe in excuses anymore. Once you get to work, you have to work. You have to take care of business. And, after work, then you could go back to how you deal with, the things of life. When I worked the other jobs, after I got my stuff revoked, I worked other jobs, and I always told myself, okay, my driver's license, I got to keep my driver's license. So I follow all the rules. I said, well, wait a minute. I should have done this when I had my barber license. So I had a wake-up call. Has been a wake-up call for me. It's been a wake-up call for me, and I'm a changed person. And I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Sumler. So I'll leave it to the board if they have any questions for you, and I'll start with President Weeks.
Okay.
Good morning.
Good morning.
What was your reason? There were problems. You were given a chance, a first chance by being put on probation. It appears that you didn't meet any of the criteria required for staying on probation. Why is that?
Well, I'm going to try to do this without having an excuse, because I just don't want to have excuses anymore. It was my fault. I should have followed everything when you guys tried to help me, and I didn't. I seen a strong woman that raised me get real sick, and I guess I should have took a break, I guess, but I know that right now I'm just a better person. I'm more clean, especially after COVID. That made me. I don't want to kill anyone, I'm just a more clean person, and I should have followed the rules when I got a chance.
When did you totally remove yourself from the business of any licensee activities?
I would do it from time to time, and then I have customers that I've been cutting for 33 years. They would tell me to come to their house, and I would take myself away from my other jobs, and I would go cut them.
You understand that once the license is revoked, you really can't do any sort of haircutting activity. Okay, I have no more questions.
Okay, let's go down the line here, starting on my far left for questions, and then we'll finish up with Ms. Himes' questions. So, Member Ellis?
Good morning. Thank you for taking the time to be here with us today.
Good morning.
Could you tell us a little bit more about the remedial courses that you took during your probationary term?
With my jobs that I had, all my delivery jobs, I drove for Lyft for 2.5 years, and then that's when COVID hit, and then I just started doing deliveries for a place called Rody, a company called Rody, delivering all sorts of stuff, stuff from Home Depot, stuff from the hospital, medications. And then now I'm employed at Where's My Luggage? Lost luggage from the airport, bringing to people's house.
And have you taken any courses in terms of health and sanitation for barbering and cosmetology?
Yes, Oversight, and plus I work with my grandmother. My grandmother worked with the state, well, not for the state board, but getting people prepared to pass get their license. So I worked with her, and that brought us close together for like the last 3-4 years, till she passed away last week.
Thank you.
Okay.
Member Jimenez? Go ahead.
Good morning, sir, and thank you for being here as well. During this time that you didn't have your licenses, other than the instance that you mentioned, did you still participate in any other activities as far as the business went? And is your business currently still open under the label of Bob's Barbershop?
Yes.
And how is that business being ran now? Are you still the owner of it, or?
I have one of my barbers that work there. He works at the barber college. He's an instructor, so I just left him in control. And my brother basically owns the shop and runs the shop. But I still pay the lease. I still pay the lease.
So it's still under your name?
Yes, me and my brother's name.
I have no further questions.
Because I didn't want to put the taxes on him. That I still want to pay the taxes.
Okay, member Fawn?
Thank you. So, Mr. Sumler, can you clarify, have you practiced at all at your business since your license was revoked?
Yes.
Okay. And how long did that continue for?
It wasn't a continual thing. It's just emergencies when someone needed a haircut, old customers.
And what was the nature of the criminal conviction that you mentioned on your petition for reinstatement?
It was for AAA. I received a check from them, which I wasn't supposed to receive, and it was fraudulent. And I went to court, and they put me on probation for the 2 years, but then they didn't charge me because my car was actually stolen, so they didn't charge me. But I wasn't supposed to take the check at that time, but I did.
Are there any ongoing matters or disciplinary actions regarding that?
No, they didn't. I went to court the last court date, and then they said that they weren't gonna continue on, so they just dropped it.
Okay. Could you explain to me your understanding of, why this board exists and why we have the regulations that we do?
Yes, I understand. So that people follow rules. Rules have to be followed. Because if people don't follow rules, then people just do whatever they want, and rules need to be followed. And I understood that once I just really couldn't lose my driver's license. I said, oh, wait a minute. If I had done this with my barber license, I wouldn't have been in this trouble. Just following the rules.
Can you say more about the specific rules, or your understanding of why why we have the rules that we do? Not just rules in general, but the specific rules.
I know, for one, my cleanliness and sanitation. People could get infected if you don't clean. If you're not clean, someone could get infected and get hurt and have a rash or.
Can you share more about what you mentioned that you have been participating in ongoing education with your grandmother. Can you tell us more about what you learned or what specific topics you've been covering?
Oh, well, she talked to me about being more clean, and I know before I just wasn't like, I would clean when I seen something, and that wasn't good. You're supposed to clean all the time. Clean brushes, put brushes in the barber side, brush hair off before you put it in there. Don't just dump it in there, but clean it off before you rinse it. So I've been doing a lot more stuff, being more clean.
Can you tell me when was the last time you reviewed the board's regulations or what materials you looked at?
Well, I've been looking at them a lot during this time, and I was a person that wasn't following the rules. I was a person like that.
Thank you. Nothing further.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. Moving on to Ms. Member Munoz.
Hi, thank you for being with us here today.
Hello.
So I'm reading that you have some cost recovery quarterly reports due remedial education. And I was also reading your letters of reference. It sounds like you care about people very much. And the point of the board is to uphold public safety. So on the technical side, how are you going to show going forward the people that you serve that you care about their safety? What are the steps you're going to take with your plan here?
Well,
And how will you show your customers you care about their safety?
well, I decided for myself to always follow up and take classes, even if it's online, just to be a better barber all the time, and just always follow up, because I know that dusters you can't use anymore. You have to use a blow dryer, and I never knew that. So you have to always be updated and follow the new rules. So I would always follow up and always want to learn more.
I have a follow-up question. What is your plan to have accountability? Because I know this is hard to do on your own. What's your plan to have some accountability for all of this?
Well, my fiance is a nurse, and she's been helping me a lot, because the hospital needs to be clean, so she's been helping me a lot.
Thank you, Member Munoz. Moving on to Member Fairley.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for being here also. What is your motivation at this time to get your license back?
Because when I did all of this, working with my grandmother and telling her, she said, get your license. I said, Grandma, I know they're not going to give it to me. She said, go and try and get your license. So I'm just going to keep trying and to do the right thing, to be a better person. Because you can't say you're a better person and you don't have a license in doing something without a license. That's not a good person. So I want to be a better person and be a good person. And also with my customers, when I told them the truth about what's going on, and they all told me, get your license. So my motivation is for them, for me, and to be a better person. Just like with me driving, you have to have a license. You have to have a license, like the jobs I have. If I didn't have a license, they wouldn't let me work. So I want to have license to doing what I'm doing. What I love.
It states that you were ordered to do 80 hours of remedial courses. Have you honored that? Have you completed those 80 hours? And if you have, what were the courses that you took pertaining to getting your license back?
I didn't finish the 80 hours. I did 20 hours, and then that's when all this happened. And then I just been taking classes just with my grandmother, and the barber that's a trainer at the barber college, I don't know why I thought, because I was a barber for 30 years, I didn't need to learn anything. I don't know how I fell so far down like that.
In those 20 hours, what courses did you take?
Just sanitation.
Okay. No further questions.
Thank you, Member Fairley. And lastly, Member Isbell.
Okay, good morning.
Good morning.
I just have one question. Several of the letters of character references that you have submitted mention current barbering and cosmetology work that you're doing. Can you explain a little bit more about the work that you're doing currently in the industry?
Now, you said with my where's my luggage job?
No, I'm talking about the character references that you submitted that mention, for instance, Todd Sinegar mentions that you've been styling, cutting their hair for at least 10 years. There's a letter from Rochelle Rawls-Shaw from 2021 that mentions you've been cutting her hair for 25 years, and that introduced her daughter, who you cut and styled her hair when she decided to stop going to the beauty shop. And she has 2 young sons who got their first haircuts from Bob and continue to look forward to their monthly visits to Bob's barber shop. And another letter here that says in 2021 that they've known you for 5 years, and that you use your talents as a barber to help senior citizens with disabilities. So I'm just curious what kind of work you're doing now.
Well, I said it before. I apologize. I have been cutting hair, but not consistently. But I know it's still wrong. It's still wrong. I'm not making any excuses because it's wrong. And I don't want to be wrong. I don't want to be wrong. I want to be right.
Okay, and you understand you need a license in order to cut hair?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Member Isbell. Now we're going to shoot it over to Madam Deputy Attorney General, Ms. Heim. Any questions?
Yes, thank you. Mr. Sumler, where are you currently working?
Where's my luggage in Millbrae, in San Francisco?
And there are some fines that the board does not have a record of you paying, specifically a fine for $2,300, $1,250, and $1,482 are still owed from some of the citations that were issued to you. Do you have a plan for paying those fees?
Well, I had 2 years. What's this? It's 2022. I would say 2 years ago, I went to the office where you pay, and then they only let me pay my barber license. I paid that full, all the fine, but they wouldn't let me pay the establishment fines, and I was wanting to pay that. I think it was $4,500 at that time, $4,800. I didn't remember it being $6,000, but I think it was a little bit under $5,000. And I wanted to pay it, and they said that I couldn't.
Okay, thank you. So it
But I
looks...
would like to pay it.
Okay, so it looks like the total amount with the citation fines that are still outstanding and the costs from your probation case, it looks like the total at this time is $6,682. If you were granted a reinstatement of your license, would you be prepared to pay those fees?
I would pay that the same day.
Thank you. And you noted that you had 20 hours of the 80 hours of remedial education. Do you have any proof of the completion of those classes?
No, because I didn't finish.
So you don't have any proof from the classes that you did
They
take?
said that they would give it to me when I finished the 80, and then I didn't finish.
I see. Okay. And would you be completing those classes? if
Yes.
you were? Thank you. Granted. I'll complete my sentence. If you were completed reinstatement, what I heard you say is yes, you would complete those hours of remedial education.
Yes.
Thank you. If your license were reinstated and placed on a probationary status, would you be prepared to accept all of the terms and conditions that were...
Yes.
placed on your probationary license? I
Yes.
just heard you say yes. Thank you. Do you take full responsibility for the behavior that led to the revocation of your barber license?
Yes.
Thank you. Board member Isabel asked you questions about specific letters in your packet, and I also note that there is a letter dated November 16th, 2021, that comments that you he has been a regular client of yours for the past 10 years. Many of the letters in your packet speak very highly of you, but also give the impression that you have been practicing throughout the pandemic and after your license was revoked in 2018, that you have continued to practice as a barber. And what I've heard you say today is that, yes, you have. Is that a correct statement?
Yes.
Thank you. Going forward, if the board were to deny your petition for reinstatement today, would you continue to do any work as a barber without having a license?
No.
Thank you. Is there anything else that you would like to say to the board to ensure them that you are safe to practice as a licensed barber and will no longer engage in the behaviors that led to the revocation of your license?
I'm a person that wants to do the right thing for not just my customers, not just to follow all the rules, but for me now, so I could say, when I'm looking at YouTube or TV and I see someone doing something, I could say, I'm not that person. I could say that to myself, I'm not that person. I'm a person that wants to do right.
Thank you. I have one more question. This is regarding the criminal conviction that you noted on your application or petition for reinstatement. You were talking about a criminal conviction related to a AAA check. Can you tell us when that occurred? I didn't hear a specific date. Was that after your revocation?
No, that was 2014, and then they wanted to charge 2017, 18, and then 2021, that's when they dropped it.
Thank you. And I actually do have one more question. Do you have any proof of that conviction?
Yes, I sent that with,
Okay.
yes.
Okay. Thank you. I have nothing further.
Thank you, Ms. Hunt. All right. I'm going to bump it back to you. Mr. Sumler, anything you would like to add after all of this questioning?
Well, I just want to say thank you, because the direction before this happened, the direction my life was going, and I don't know why I couldn't see it. It was going in the direction to where not only was I a bad person, I was becoming a bad, and not even knowing, no telling how far I would have went down. So I thank you guys for coming and taking my license, because if it wouldn't have happened, I just would have kept being a dirty person. So a lot has changed with me. A lot has changed.
All right, thank you, Mr. Sumler. And anything else from the board? Doesn't appear that there's anything further. And Ms. Hahn, at this time, I'll leave it to you if you want to make a closing statement or any kind of recommendation.
I do not. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Well, that concludes the hearing in this matter. The record is closed, the matter is submitted, and we are off the record. Thank you all, and good luck to you, Mr. Sumler.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Excuse me. Do I keep this?
Yeah, I keep those in there.
Okay.
Just so that you have all of the documentation that you're going to need because we don't provide it to the board members.
Okay. Thank you. Okay.
Session, and let me call the open session to order again, and let's begin with a roll call of the board members. Marcine?
Steve Weeks,
Present.
Calamy Pham, present. Megan Ellis,
Present?
Tanya Fairley,
Present.
Reese Isbell,
Present.
Yolanda Jimenez,
Present.
Derek Matos,
Present.
Danielle Munoz.
Present.
Thank you.
And we have a quorum. So let's go into, now that we're in open session, let's go to number 3 on our agenda, Board President's opening remarks. And let me begin by formally announcing the recent resignation of one of our board members, Jackie Crabtree. She's given us up for a wonderful new retired life in Oregon, out in the hills, on this one beautiful area. And I was lucky enough to have served with her for 4 years, and believe me, she's going to be missed. She was an active board member and an outspoken in her advocacy for the board rules and regulations, especially as it resulted in establishments, which she owned several. She gave us unique insight as an establishment owner. So I'm sure we're all going to wish her well. She deserves this new phase of life, even though she has blatantly left us for some sort of better life, whatever that means.
Who told her to do that?
No, she's great. In happier news, let's welcome our new public board member appointed by the governor recently, Danielle Munoz of Sacramento. Danielle, welcome to the board. She holds a Master of Science degree in Marriage, Family, and Child Counseling and is currently a director of CARES office at California State University, although he made a recent lateral move in that? Great. Big now, you're going to be in Long Beach. Great, terrific. Welcome, Danielle. As we look at the way our board is currently constituted, we have an abundance of great talent on this board now. Really good, talented people. The backgrounds of each of you are perfectly matched to the responsibilities that the board is facing now and in the future. As individual board members, you're all a part of a critical engine to the success of our state board. So as we welcome new board members on, it's time to also reflect on the awesome responsibility we have as board members to the public, to our licensees, and to our staff. As a prelude to tomorrow's strategic planning session, but separate from tomorrow's meeting, today I would like to challenge all of my talented board colleagues to individually take on an issue where they can improve board services to the public. Find something and make it your own. Become an expert on that issue. Let that be your contribution to the future of our board. Nothing is more important to the health and sustainability of our board than having highly motivated and qualified board members. Every board is only as effective as its individual members, and we now have a motivated and very highly qualified board. So I urge you to jump in and help resolve those challenging issues we face now and we're going to face in the future. Our task as a board is to take the long-term view. The role of our board is to protect the future as well as the present. I'm reminded of the old adage, if not now, when? If not me, who? And I think this board's going to do very, very well as far as the governing. And now let's go to area 4, any board member remarks. If any members have any opening remarks they'd like to say. Reese?
Yeah, I just have a quick question about the board and how many openings we still have to fill by the governor or whomever, and what those openings are.
And Christie, there now remain just the gubernatorial appointments of the individual licensees, right?
There are 5 vacancies still. With Jackie leaving, we would have another cosmetologist/owner. Tanya fills kind of both of those seats too. So they would have to designate one or the other. And an electrologist, an esthetician, and a manicurist. And then that's 4, I believe, right? So we'd have one more public.
One more public.
Right.
Senate or Assembly, do you know?
All governor.
Oh, all governor, okay.
And this, our quorum is still the same?
Correct.
Okay, regardless of Jackie having stepped away?
We were thankful that Danielle came in right as Jackie was going out.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions you might have or any statements you'd like to make? Okay, if not, let's move on to the minutes of the April 25, 2022 board meeting. And I assume everyone's read through the minutes. And if there are no questions, perhaps a motion to approve the minutes?
I did have one change. One moment. On page 8 out of 12 of the minutes, the first paragraph, there's three lines down. It states, Ms. Underwood, she stated that currently the governor's 2-year wage fee was still in effect. Was that,
That should say waiver of fees.
okay,
Got it.
Amended minutes, then? Okay, so that would be your amendment to this?
yes, and
So
then
now we would vote on amended, the entire resolution, minutes amended?
Did you have another? You started.
no, that was my only change.
Yes, so your motion would include the amendment as stated by Kelly Mayfam.
Anyone want to make the motion?
I'll move to approve the minutes from April 25th, 2022 with the one change that I described.
Seconded.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve the amended minutes with a second for that motion. So at this point, let's go to public comment. Is there any public comment that would like to be done on just our minutes, last meeting? And there apparently is no public comment here. So at this stage, we're back and we're looking at a motion to vote on the minutes. Let's vote on this motion then. Marcine, you want to call the roll call of the board on the minutes?
Okay, I'll go ahead and call the roll. Steve Weeks,
Yes.
Kelly Mayfam,
Yes?
Megan Ellis,
Yes.
Tanya Fairley,
Yes.
Reese Isbell,
Yes.
Yolanda Jimenez,
Yes.
Derek Matos,
Yes.
Danielle Munoz.
Yes.
Motion passes.
And great, so it's unanimous approval of that. Okay, let's move to item number 6 on our agenda today, which is the executive management reports that Christy will walk us through various areas.
Okay, so within your packets today are our various reports. We're going to start today with our administration operations report. We have a new staff person who's going to be taking over our schools desk that is approving new applications, handling enforcement cases on that, anything that has to do with a school. We have several vacancies. We are currently recruiting for a regulations analyst who also does our contracts. We will be going out to post that position for our 3rd time. Unfortunately, as many other state offices are telling us, we are just not getting applicants in. So it's been a very long, hard process to fill our vacancies. So hopefully soon we have better news in that, because we do, as you know, have a lot of regulation packages going through the process that we could really use some help on. New fleet procedures. Again, this is just general information that we wanted to provide you with. We are currently in the process of ordering new vehicles for our inspectors. Not all new vehicles, but we have a process where you have to take the older ones, or the ones with the most miles, and survey them out, and then you get new ones brought in. It's all based on a contract with the Department of General Services. We do have one Tesla that's coming into us that was highly recommended that we add to our fleet, as well as Honda Accord hybrids. I think that's the latest, because that model has changed many times just because of there's not a lot of cars out there right now, so we can't seem to get them all the way here.
Are there restrictions on the type of cars we can buy? They all
There
have
are.
to be hybrid or electric?
Yes. And then, of course, we have a comment here about our strategic planning session that we will have tomorrow. In this packet includes our current expenditures on page 2, so you can see what we're currently spending in the areas of the budget, and we obviously have a very healthy budget at this board. This continues to play out with the changes from SB 803. So we've been working directly with the Department of Consumer Affairs Budget Office, who is also strapped for positions as well. And one of the things that we talked about with them recently is there are a lot of boards under the department who don't have as healthy budget as us, so those budget analysts from Consumer Affairs have to dedicate more time to them. Not to say that they're more important than us, but in a budget world they are. So they know we're not one they have to look at too closely, so eventually we will get these red lines corrected so that we are properly allocated, because we spend money in the same places every year. It's very standard. It's very much the same every year. It's just the allocation has to be done by the budget office, and that's something that we'll be working on. The next page is our fund conditions. So, did you have a question?
Just a quick question related to COVID and how it impacted or didn't impact our budget, especially around travel and meetings and so forth.
There wasn't a huge impact. We definitely saved by the online meetings that we had. So the travel for the people in this room that normally would travel more, that was saved. The governor, of course, did waive the renewal fees for the last 2 years, or for 2 years, but we got a reimbursement from the general fund for that, so that's not a big impact. So all in all, there really wasn't a big impact to change in our budget for COVID.
And so that won't impact our future budgets?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Because we have about a 16-month reserve, are we looking at this stage, any special projects that we could allocate some of this money on that would enhance the operation of the board?
Yes, we are actually, sort of. I don't know that it would be, we are looking at special projects. One of the big projects, that's not confidential about inspections, is it? No. Okay, just wanted to make sure it wasn't a confidential situation. We have recently been awarded an opportunity to have our inspectors go, can you help me?
Yes, paperless.
Paperless, thank you. Can't hear you. Carrie actually works on a project with 2 other boards who we are hoping to go paperless with our inspectors. That is out in the field, some way for them to have an electronic inspection report. So that's one thing we're doing. Now, we did work with Department of Consumer Affairs and 2 other boards where we were we're going to be receiving funds for that. So it's not going to impact our budget very much, but it's going to impact our operations immensely. I mean, it's a huge project, super, super exciting. Very, very beginning of that. So we're not going to be seeing this for a while, but Carrie actually had to submit a pitch to the team to see if we would be one of those boards that would be eligible for funds to make an improvement in technology.
Are other boards that have a similar inspector type of positions, are they utilizing electronics?
So no one is in our department, so this would be huge for the entire department. The boards that are working on this with us is the Veterinary Medicine Board and the Dental Board, who have like an inspection process. No one else really uses our inspector classification anymore for the obvious, concerns that we have of we don't pay them a lot of money, which is also hopefully going to change. So that's a huge project we're going to be working on in the coming year. Mm-hmm. Okay, and one of the things we also are going to be doing is a fee study. We have to look at our fees for what we are charging, because we should be charging the cost what it costs us to run this board. Renewal fees are to support enforcement. Our application and licensing fees should be whatever the cost is to the board. So we have the exam vendor, we have all of our staffing that it takes. So we are looking at that because of the changes in SB 803 and determining what really needs to be changed. We had hoped and we had given a target for September to have that completed. We've met with our budget office, and that was probably too ambitious, but we are hoping for the end of the year to have a fee study done. Really look at our funds and see, are we charging appropriately, or is there a change that needs to be done?
As a board in our fee structure, aren't we pretty well not charging a lot of money, looking at other boards, what they charge for license renewals?
We definitely are one of the less expensive boards, but it's because of our volume.
Right.
So other boards, even other cosmetology and barbering boards are much higher in the country than us. But again, it's because we have such a high volume, it brings that fee down.
Right.
One of the big issues that we need to look at, though, is we no longer have the practical exam. So we're no longer staffing 2 facilities. We no longer have rent or leases or all the utilities that go along with maintaining 2 examination facilities. We don't have those anymore. So that's what we have to look at to see where we fall.
But given the reduction in expenses for that, to cover those 2 facilities, and given the fact that we have a budget surplus by a significant amount right now, doesn't it give us, are there projects on our wish list that we would like to move in on and spend some of that money?
It would depend on what those projects on our wish list are. I think we could look at doing something like a newsletter. We could use, funds like that. Could we hire more people? No, because we're allocated for a certain amount of people. Now, we are looking, which we're going to talk about under licensing, we are looking to hire additional staff that is not technically allocated, so we call those limited term positions, and that's to address the email situation that we've talked about, how many emails that we're getting at the board office. So we have been approved for that, so we can use the funds for that as well. One of the biggest issues is we have a lot of vacancies that we can't fill right now because we're just not getting the applicants. I think we're starting to see a little bit of the change right now. I will say that one of our manager positions that just closed for advertisement, we got a little over 30 applications. I think the time before that, because this is the second or third time that we've advertised for it, we only got 6. So maybe we're seeing some changing, but we're not getting the applications like we would have 3 years ago. We would have stacks of applications for every position, and now we're getting very few.
Are we competing against other parts of the state government that's doing better in soliciting employees?
So I've talked to a lot of people outside of our department as well as in our department, and everybody seems to be experiencing the same issue. One of the things with Department of Consumer Affairs is we're a very production-oriented board, as we all are, and we need people in the office. We have a public counter, we have phones coming in, we have to be open 8 to 5. So we have all of our staff on a rotating telework. Now keep in mind, COVID sent everybody home, so we were 100% telework during COVID. So now we've brought all of our staff are back at some point on like a hybrid level. Well, there are other state agencies who are not in that type of situation. They're not production oriented, so they're teleworking and probably will 100% of the time. So if there's a competition between taking a state position at an office here and taking a state position where you're going to have to come into the office a couple days, 2 to 3 days a week, they're taking the 100% telework. And it's just not possible for us to go 100%.
Wow.
Any more questions? All right, we'll move on. So next is our licensing and our exams and disciplinary review committee. We've had some successes with hiring some people that we have listed here. We have a couple new people in our licensing unit, so that's super exciting. The licensing unit is happily staying within a good range of their workload, so there's no backlogs being created by our vacancies. We are continuing to recruit for all of our vacant positions. We have a comment here about our telephones and our emails. I can tell a good example of something we experienced last week was we had hit 1,000 pending emails that we had received that we could not respond to.
Over what period of time?
It was over about 5 to 6 days.
Wow.
So we had 1,000 emails and we just couldn't catch up.
How do you parcel that out to staff? How is that done? I mean, because these questions are on the broad range of anything.
They are.
We have so many specialists. How do we answer
I can tell you
those?
that we picked a day, and everyone that was able, because not everyone in our office is trained to answer emails, but everyone that was able, including everyone at this table, other than Christy, our reg attorney down there, we all answered, we stopped work to answer emails. So we got it done. We had a weekend then, and now we're back up to about 400. But they're only within a couple days old. So it's a huge...
Well, nothing to drive the need for this staffing positions of phone room more than just that.
Exactly.
We're turning executive people into answering sometimes elementary phone calls coming in, taking our staff away from their assigned positions and jobs to answer something that may not be related to them at all, just to do it. By doing that, we're not serving the public well, too, because we want them to get through quickly without a reserve. They want to get through and get the question answered quickly and correctly. And boy, if there's ever a need for that, those positions, that's it.
For sure. We're also going to be sending a notice out to schools this week because some of the questions that we are getting are schools wanting us to check the status of applicants who we've only had their application for 10 days. And so we have an automated response that we've created, and we have a lot of information on there as well. We've now added to that automated response that if your application was submitted within the last, certain number of weeks, we can't respond to you. Because one of the things we're doing is we're taking people from processing those applications to answer those emails, and it's going to delay the application. So we're going to try to get that word out to the schools that we just can't give you status reports on all of your students who have only finished school 2 weeks ago. We don't even get the applications from our cashiering unit in that amount of time. So we're going to try to get that word out to schools, to get the word out to their students that there's still a processing time. It's going really, really good once we get that application processed because the students now can schedule their own exam. And that's going great. So once they get approved, they can schedule that exam right away, which they used to be scheduled by us in 30 days. So now it's going really well, and so I think people are just thinking we are actually processing them quicker than we physically can. So hopefully that gets better.
Good.
I have one question. Other than the schooling, are you finding patterns of similar questions being thrown you guys' way of emails? And once you find, are you seeing those patterns, and can you make those distinctions to possibly go automated in those areas as well?
So like changing the process to automate?
Well, for instance, in 1,000 emails, did you see maybe one particular topic that continued to come up other than the one you just mentioned?
Yes.
Schools. Okay, so is it possible then, as you guys did for the schooling question in regards to test dates,
Yes.
that's pretty much what we're projecting to do going forward?
Definitely. And we try to, the automated response is pretty great. It has a lot of information, and we've used that even like during COVID. We change it all the time for what we see being the most common questions. So that's been very helpful. I can tell you we're all about customer service, and we really want to answer those emails, and our staff really want to answer those emails. So it gets pretty stressful when you see that you have that many. It's hard to let go of that email when even though the automatic response has answered it, you still want to give them something personal. But we're at that point where we're going to have to, and they are getting the answer in the automated response. But we change that and are looking at it all the time.
Christy, is that automated response like in a fact? Like, does it say, thank you for your email, and then it lists facts like question, like if you're calling about, or if your question, okay, I just want to make sure. And then does that also lead to, if they had a question about something that you can find it on DCA, on our Board and Barbering Cosmetology, and if they click it, it takes them to that page,
Yes.
or?
No.
No, not the page, okay, because...
It's just the homepage. Just where we refer people to our website. Yeah.
Oh, so refer back to the website, and then they have to find
Right.
what they're looking for there.
Right. But keep in mind, if it's not answered in that email, we will respond to them. We're only not going to respond to the ones which is most common, is I submitted my application last week, when's my exam date? Those are the most common that we don't want to respond to. And also people will have a technical issue with the Breeze system, and they'll email us, and there's actually a Breeze help desk in the department, so that automatic response says if you've had technical issues, this is who you need to contact.
I think I'm referring to like a question, like if someone got a citation and they were written up for something and they're trying to find that particular citation, like explanation. If it's on the fact, if your call's about a citation, or refer to particular section where the citations come out at, or...
Yeah, or if it's on a citation that gets sent to our citation unit, and they get a response directly from someone.
That's what I was trying, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
How quickly, and has there been a commitment to this whole idea of limited staff coming on, starting up? What is the time frame on that?
Well, we are recruiting for people now.
Oh, you are? Okay.
Yes. So we don't necessarily have places for them to sit. So we're looking at that as well. The department recently came out with a new telework agreement, so we're going to be looking at possibly hoteling some of our staff, so that they can either reserve a cube if needed. We also have a large room off of our office that is a conference room that we don't use. So we're looking at maybe, and we've already met with the Department of Consumer Affairs and the Department of General Services to try to put some desks in that area for kind of like our call center. So it's moving forward.
Does this limited term staff go against our 22-23 budget?
It would. It is where we'd be paying the salary if we get them, as soon as we get them hired. It's going to be interesting. You won't be able to see it in the budget because we have so many salary savings from vacant positions. It's not even going to be a wash, but it'll come out of our allocation that we have for other positions.
How quickly do you expect to have these temporary telephone people up? Are we months away, or?
Months. Because if we can get them in, which is the biggest struggle, then they're going to have to go through quite a bit of training.
Okay.
All right, we're going to move on to page 5. That's our quarterly applications received. And looking at this, basically we're up in all areas. We've increased with all areas of applications. Even our personal service permit is finally kicking in. We got a whole 29 of them. But other than that, all of our other application types, we're slowly seeing those receiving more and more of those applications.
Why do you think PSP is getting such low numbers, I think?
Because people, I think, are doing it illegally out of their homes, which they should not be doing.
Can we put a directive out in some way, email blast to our people?
We have been working on some additional outreach information to licensees. Is that correct, Allison? Didn't we just work on no? We're working on an outreach to send out to licensees to try to get them to stop doing that. And we're also working on some outreach for PSP in general for consumers.
Gotcha.
In-home services, I think we updated.
Services, we're gonna...
All right, moving on to page 6 is our examination results, and we've given you kind of just some breakdowns on that. I do want to let you know that this is for quarter April 1 through June 30th. So at our next board meeting, I think we'll see exam pass rates go lower because we did implement a new exam July 1. Anytime you change the exam, regardless of vendor, you're going to see those go down. We've been watching that closely, and they did go down a little. Just this week, just this morning, I received the update for last week's exam pass rates, and they already seem to be coming back up.
Christy, I have a question about this, because I know we talked about the language transitions, and looking at, again, here we are, the Spanish pass and fail rate significantly higher, doubled on the failed rate. That doesn't seem to have shifted because the tests have changed. Are we in the process of analyzing that, the language on the tests that have been changed to kind of see how, if it's the level of language?
Yeah, this data is for the prior exam, so when we get a full quarter's worth of the new exam, we'll be looking at those pass rates for Spanish especially, and then working with the testing vendor to try to see if they have any recommendations for us. One of the things that we're hoping that we know that we can get from this vendor is where those people are doing poorly, so that we can hopefully communicate that with schools.
When you say where, it's like a particular question, a particular content? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
That's good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I have a quick question too. If someone speaks another language than the 4 that are listed here, how do we handle that? How does that come through?
They get to bring an interpreter. So any language, anyone who speaks a language that's not in one that we offer can bring their interpreter. We don't provide that interpreter, they can bring whoever they want. And then there's certain requirements that interpreter has to meet. They can't be a licensee or they can't be a student, so they can't basically not have access to the exam before already, so they couldn't have served as an interpreter before. But the board has maintained that for a really long time, an interpreter program, and they come into the written test site with them. Do they do it in separate rooms now?
Yes,
PSI?
they have a separate.
So they have a separate room for interpreters, and the interpreter sits next to the candidate with a proctor, and they interpret the exam in real time for them.
And how do we determine the level of need for a potential additional language to be added?
We actually do it by the interpreter. Well, there's a couple ways we do it. There's a law that requires us to provide information in a different language other than English if our population is 5% or larger. So our population is definitely 5% or larger in Spanish and Vietnamese. It's not in Korean. However, the exam's done in Korean. So we thought, why not offer it if it's available in Korean? And so to meet that 5% threshold by law is a high number, and we don't have it in the other languages. However, we track the language by interpreter, just on our own, and we have seen the increases in languages, so that's why we've at least translated our health and safety regulations, so that we've translated those into Farsi, Arabic, and Chinese traditional and Chinese simplified. Is that it? Just those 4? So we've seen that that's our highest number of interpreters. And so we translated our laws and regs for them and have that available. So we always watch the interpreter numbers to see if those numbers where they're at, and then we would at least translate laws and regs for that. But it's never met the level of having an exam.
Okay, thank you. I represent San Francisco generally, and we have a large Chinese population, so I was just curious how we as a state meet that potential level versus San Francisco and the Bay Area as a separate entity.
Right.
So thank you.
Christy, could you speak about how the new exam, the July 1st exam, is it changed just because we've gotten rid of the practical, or?
We changed vendors.
Vendors,
Yes.
I see.
Yes.
Okay.
Still based on the same textbooks. There's only 2 textbooks used in California, so they're based on the same textbooks.
And how long have we used the prior vendor?
We used to do our own exam when I started, so maybe 10 years, if not longer.
And what was the reason for the change?
It's contractual.
Okay.
I'm not positive I can speak of it.
Okay, thank you.
Crickets. Would you agree? Okay.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I didn't miss something about the conversation about the exams, or if there was anything, a significant reason for the change aside from kind of, it sounds like administrative reasons. Okay,
Do we track what language these students are taught at their school versus what language they choose to do their exam in?
We don't, because we don't have that data. Well, we don't collect that data in our system. However, the Bureau of Private Post-Secondary does approve schools to teach in a different language. So we have in the past gone in to compared all of our schools with all the schools that are approved by the Bureau to teach in Spanish or Vietnamese. And then we've pulled those, because that's where we went originally with the Spanish pass rates. We first went to schools. There must be an issue with the school. First we went to translation of the exams, and that wasn't it. Then what's happening at the schools? So we had to manually look up in the Bureau's website everyone who was approved to teach in those languages. And then we pulled them out and compared their pass rates to schools that have students that take the test in Spanish, but that aren't approved to teach in Spanish. And that's where one of the big problems falls, is there's a ton of students that choose to take the exam in Spanish that did not go to a Spanish-speaking school. So they likely did not have a Spanish textbook. They weren't told that we have, translation guides. They just made that choice outside of their school to take that test in Spanish.
It's an enormous disadvantage.
It is. Now keep in mind also that the test is displayed on the computer in both languages. So it is displayed in both languages. But it does make some of our data hard to really extract, because you have so many students that will take a test from a school that did not teach in Spanish, but they want to take their test in Spanish. So we did pull that out at one time because we thought, well, that's the problem. It was not. We didn't see any red flags that gave us a concern that students taking it from Spanish taught schools or non-Spanish taught schools was raising that level. It was still across the board. Again, I go back to the issues we've seen in the apprentice program, because we do see an increase in that. If we were able to compare only Spanish teaching students that attended a Spanish-speaking school and Spanish testers from the apprentice program, you're looking at a better data from 2 Spanish-tested people, right? But you have all these other students that didn't go to a Spanish teaching school that are skewing the data for us because it's hard to look at.
Because they're approved as a Spanish teaching school doesn't necessarily mean that they're teaching in Spanish. That could be nothing more than a guise to bring students in to their school versus somewhere else, and then they end up taught in a mix of the languages or just English.
Definitely.
It's tough.
And they could have gotten approved to teach Spanish years ago from the Bureau and stopped doing it a long time ago. So the data is just not solid when it comes to that, but we've tried.
I just have a follow-up question. I believe we talked about this in Education and Outreach Committee, but the exams in any language, are they written at a specific grade level? And have we considered whether or not that grade level fits with our test results per se?
They are. Our law says 10th grade level. And then when they do the translations, they go through the translation process, and then they go through a separate process where they bring in licensees from the industry to look at those exam questions to make sure that they are proper. Because so many different words can be translated wrong that we want it to make sure it's industry specific. So first they translate them, then they go through, and I believe, do they call that adaptation?
Yes.
I could be making that up. So they go through that process as well to make sure that the industry people that are of that language are also understanding them as well. So it'll be very interesting with the new exam vendor, the type of data that we receive. And if we can pinpoint a content area and we can work back more with the schools, especially the schools who are teaching in those languages, because there's really only a handful of those schools that actually teach in the Spanish language.
Will we receive early data back by our next board meeting to talk about?
Possible, yes.
And you mentioned we do it at the 10th grade level. Is that a state mandated level?
Yes.
Okay. I'm curious because I know in San Francisco our election adaptations is at the 5th grade level. So I'm just curious where we got our number. Thanks.
All right. We will move on to page 7. And we're still talking about exam results here. This is just where we break it down by a comparison to show schools, apprentice programs, and out of country. That was another area we thought was an issue because we do have so many people that come in from out of country. We pulled those out to get their exam results on their own as well. And then the next page is some additional information of comparison of the schools with the language added in. So you've got your school programs, your apprentice programs, and your out-of-country schools. But those school programs are close to 260 schools, and only, I want to say maybe, last time we looked, there was definitely less than 20 schools that are teaching in Spanish. So that's all combined.
Christy, could I ask a quick question in regard to that? Is there a revocation process or anything for a school to be defined as Spanish-speaking, and if they don't meet a requirement, they can no longer use that title?
Not under our authority. I don't know that if that's something that the Bureau has authority to look at or not, but it's something, we meet with them on a regular basis. It's something I could ask. All right, so our next page, on page 9, is our licenses issued. You can see that in our quarter from April to June, that did increase as well. And then our licenses issued over the last 5 years. We like to pretend that fiscal year 2021 never happened. And then on our next page is our licensed population, always around 622,000. And then we have our Disciplinary Review Committee. Thank you to all of you who have already served and those who have it coming. That sounded terrible. I'm sorry. I meant have hearings coming.
I think we all need to reconsider this one
Tanya's going to be like, what did I do? I think we talked about in our last board meeting that we had an LA DRC hearing that no one showed up to, or very few people showed up to. So our wonderful DRC staff was able to contact everyone, and we were much more successful here in Sacramento. That was very good, and we're going to start seeing these numbers go down. Our next one is in like 2 weeks, I think, in San Diego. And we have Kelly May, Steve, and Reese. Thank you so much for coming to San Diego with us. And then we're looking forward to a Burbank one in early October, I believe. And so I think we're going to end the year in DRC very strong. Many years ago, this was another area that was very backlogged. We used to be 8, 9, 10 months backlogged in people. And of course, COVID, we didn't have any of these hearings, but we're getting through those, and we're starting to see the brand new appeals. So super exciting. I think by the end of the year, we're going to be looking really good in DRC. All right, so that's those stats that go on.
Chrissy, quick question. In this, looking at this, this report for the DRC, or the pending, what is the average length of time that these have been pending to get into the DRC?
So for some of these, especially when we see some in San Diego, so when we just had our one in Sacramento, we were seeing DRC appeals that were only a few months old, and that's where we want to be. But because of COVID in Burbank, well, the few that we did see and the ones that were scheduled, they were 2 years old.
Oh.
So their appeals.
We gave an extension if you wanted
Absolutely.
to in person. So
Yes.
between, at one point, we were listening to them on the telephone and trying to do that. They had an election not to do this. So
Right.
it would extend even further on.
Yeah. And it doesn't impact their license when they have an appeal. In fact, it's does their license good in a sense. So if I had a license that expired at the end of this month and I just received a citation, I could appeal that, and it wouldn't impact my renewal of my license. If I didn't appeal it, it's going to impact my renewal. You can't have outstanding fines to renew your license, but with an appeal, it freezes that citation. The unfortunate thing is some of the appeals we were seeing, they're 2 years old. So they're trying, people are trying to remember, but luckily we usually have pretty good photos of the violations, and we ask them to go over those pictures. All right, so moving on to page 13 now, and that's getting into our enforcement inspections and cite and fine. Always the staffing update starting. We are without a manager in our enforcement unit right now. We are recruiting for that position. We're also out of a position for our inspection, cite, and fine, so we're recruiting for some management positions as well. You can see the listing of inspector positions that we have vacancies for. We are also working on a couple things with inspectors. We continue to work with the Department of Consumer Affairs on a package to look at their pay. I think I've mentioned this before. It's a slow process. It's something that's at the Department of Human Resources, the State Department, not DCA. And so we're just waiting to hear back. It's farther than we've ever gotten in my 17 years of being on this board. So I'm super hopeful something's going to happen. We are also looking at the options of what else can we do? Is there another classification out there that might be better served? And so we are looking at changing a couple of the positions to special investigators, which would handle a little more than what an inspector does. So an inspector goes in and looks and figures out everything that they can find and educates on how to fix it. But a special investigator would actually maybe interview a licensee who has committed some harm or allegedly has a complaint about harm, interview that consumer as well. Just takes it a little bit of a level up. A lot of other boards in the department use that. So we're looking at maybe adding a few of those to see how that would fit into our scheme, really revamping our enforcement unit altogether to make it more productive in the field.
Would you, with the same law enforcement credentials as far as X number of units would apply
It's
to that?
very different.
That was my question too. That was like, does that change because I think we talked about this before, that a couple of the requirements for an inspector kind of really doesn't add up to what they're doing in the field as far as looking for qualified applicants, requiring a bachelor's.
And we're hoping to get that changed for inspectors. For the special investigators, they are non-sworn, so they're not sworn peace officers, but they're one step down from it. So that candidate pool is going to be people with that educational background, and more so needed because they would be doing a totally different type of work.
But we can't find them now for minimal requirements on an educational background.
The special investigators make a lot more money.
How are you doing on resumes for enforcement manager?
That position has been advertised and we haven't received the applications on that yet. We have to post our positions for at least 10 days online. One of the things we started doing is posting on Indeed and posting on Handshake is something we haven't done in the past. Because honestly, it's never been an issue. We've never had to try to get applicants. So we have increased our outreach to try to get more applicants coming in. So hopefully that works. All right, so next we start off with probation, which I hear you might all have a lot of thoughts on. 5 licensees completed their probation last quarter, so we have 144 total probationers. I can tell you that is one of our positions we are recruiting for right now. Our probation analyst left us a couple of months ago. He's decided he would be better off living in Florida, and he moved cross country. So
only one person that covers that position?
Yes. And that person also handles our reinstatement cases as well as a caseload for consumer complaints. We have some information on Attorney General. We don't refer a lot of cases to the Attorney General, mostly because we issue such a high amount of citations. Most people come into compliance, so the Attorney General ones are the ones like they would have to ask for a reinstatement. These are the formal discipline where we've seen consumer harm happen, and we've felt we have enough evidence to go towards a full revocation with the Attorney General's office and the administrative law judge. And then we've provided some information on our schools. 252 schools approved right now in California. We've added information to our website. Again, we're always trying to update our website to make it easy to navigate. Before, we didn't have school applications. Believe it or not, that's one of our most common questions we get in emails is, I want to open a school. We didn't used to have that information on our website, so somebody would have to send that information out every time. So now we've got a school page where we've updated the applications, and they can just go on and find all the information they ever wanted to know about the schools. Because, of course, if you come to us and you want to open a school, it's very simple. We don't charge a fee, unfortunately. But the BPPE charges $5,000, and you have to be approved by both. So one of the things we try to do is refer people there first, because that's a pretty big fee for something that you're thinking about doing. And then we have our charts for our complaint intake, and the pie chart shows what the different types of complaints that we receive. Health and safety is a lot of, they're not cleaning their tools, I saw a dirty buffer, so those all get lumped into what we consider a health and safety complaint. Any questions? All right, moving on to page 15. We have a little more information on our complaint intake and our enforcement statistics. And you can see in the chart that we have complaints received. And we are, in our last quarter, we received 1,206. That's up by about 200 from the prior quarter, so complaints are coming back up, most likely because people are getting back into the salons, from the COVID, and people are working again, and so we'll start to see that increase.
Christy, I have a question. From complaints received to action, how long are we looking before inspectors are getting out to take a look at the complaints, like especially unlicensed activity complaints?
Do you know?
I would say a few weeks.
A few weeks.
A few weeks? Is that about, when you have a complaint like that, unlicensed activity, do you think is that an average time span that is acceptable to get there like that, or?
That's very fast.
That's fast,
That's
okay.
very fast, yeah. The complaint, so complaint comes in, it goes to our intake unit. Our intake staff assign it to an analyst to look at. And the analyst has to review that complaint and make a determination on what to do with it. We'll just say it's unlicensed activity. That's something that's going to get an inspection request right away. But the analyst has to get to it. So our analysts right now are carrying a caseload of about 220. We would like that to be around 150.
150, yeah.
So that's the amount of cases that they're looking at. And then they have what we call their tickle trackers. So they have to look at their cases on a regular basis, ones that they might have sent one out to an expert witness to get an opinion. They might have sent one for an inspection, so they're waiting for inspections to come back. So it's not instant. They have to work their case. It's a workload process. And that is because we have 2 vacancies in our enforcement unit that we're trying to fill. So each of our analysts are carrying a high number of cases right now. But given that, they're still getting out with those way faster than we have in the past, or that we think it's certainly acceptable.
Thank you.
Now, sometimes we might see a complaint that is consumer harm that is very bad, and we'll get them out faster, right away. Okay, moving on to page 16 is the ongoing enforcement statistics, the Attorney General, the disciplinary process. So that's any proposed decisions that we may have seen, any default decisions, and then going on to our disciplinary outcomes. So you can see in our last quarter, we have actually revoked one person. We have a suspension and one suspension on there as well. So that's kind of what we've done on that. And moving on to page 17 is our citations. That's pretty standard information, and our inspections are increasing. So as our inspections increase, we're going to start seeing our citations increase. Any questions on that? All right, on our page 18, we have more additional information on citations issued and our request for payment notices. So this is for citations, right, not cost recovery. Citations for people that have chose not to pay. So they get 3 notices to pay their bill, and then they get referred to collections, or they could get referred to franchise tax board, and that is where we would collect our money. So we have initiated a new process for that, and so we wanted to show you what has been done in April and May and the amount of work that's gone into those first, second, and third notices that are required for us to do before we send anybody to collections or to franchise tax board. And then lastly is our payment plans. As you know, a couple years ago, there was legislation that allowed us, a licensee, to ask for a payment plan. So this is the number of payment plans that we currently have going and the total amount of money that's sitting in a payment plan process.
What's our collection rate on that?
I think it's good, isn't it?
It's not as good as we would like it to
Okay.
be. Any idea? No, I don't have an idea. But
We'll
when I look at
add that.
I'm surprised, yeah.
All right. Moving on to page 19, which is our outreach update. As I mentioned earlier, we're trying to work with Department of Consumer Affairs, Public Affairs Office on increasing awareness of the personal service permit. We are working on a couple videos for that. And then every summer we do Safe Sandal Season, where we try to promote people being very careful, getting their pedicures, and DCA has helped us with that as well. Recent events that we have done, we held 2 town hall meetings with schools to go over the new tests that went into effect July 1. They were great. We had lots of attendance, lots of good questions, and everybody seemed real happy with that. We did a SoCal Beauty, I think this was to say barbering, professionals and students. And it was a really good event that was targeted to students. And Marcina and I went down and had lots and lots of questions from students. It was a super positive event for them. We did a virtual senior rally. This is something we do for consumers that we used to do on the Capitol lawn, but since COVID, they haven't brought it back in person yet, so we did do it virtually. I did a podcast from the Hair Game, which is, I think, popular, national, and they interviewed me on that to talk about some of the changes in the board, SB 803, and kind of just things moving forward. We did, with the ISSE, which is the big Long Beach show, I have to take a minute to thank some of my staff. Marcine, Carrie, and Alex, who's in the crowd. It's normally a trade show that I attend, and I was supposed to speak at it. I unfortunately got COVID and could not go. And it was quite the event. Carrie had to fill in for me speaking at the very last minute. And Marcine and Alex had to handle the booth. They did a great job, but we had to shuffle big time to get that covered. Allison was also supposed to go. We had a little outbreak in our office, and so we have great staff that work for you all, and they stepped up and handled that show for us. And then we are doing the Face and Body Show next month in San Jose, which is targeted to estheticians. It's actually Face and Body and combined with Nail Pro, so it's going to be kind of the esthetician manicuring show in San Jose that looks like it should be pretty well attended.
I have a quick question. When you do some outreach and you're interviewed on a podcast like you were interviewed on, could you give us, as a board member, some notification ahead of time?
Sure.
Because that would be very interesting, I think, for us to hear how you're...
This one was pre-done, and I don't know if it's been posted yet. No, it hasn't. I see someone shaking their head that it hasn't. So when it is, maybe I wasn't good enough. I'm sure it'll be posted soon, and I'll let you all know. Yes. Okay, last on my report is our SB 803 implementation plan update. Not much change from the last time we met. We're, of course, still working on the hairstylist license. That process is slow but moving. The occupational analysis is with our examination development team in DCA, and I know we've recruited for people, so I know they're working on that. Pre-apprentice training is still being worked on as well. Almost all schools have submitted curriculum to move to 1,000 hours at this point. We're finalizing some coordination between our board and the Bureau of Private Post-Secondary because they had to have those courses approved by both. And I just got an update from the Bureau late Friday, so we'll be updating some of our records to make sure everyone has approval on both. But almost all the schools that have submitted have been approved and are ready to go. Our externs, we are still working on. Of course, there's some language in a bill that's pending right now, AB 2196, that's going to assist that. And Our fines are something that we are working with our Health and Safety Committee meeting, and that's continuing to go in process. And other than that, everything else has been implemented for SB 803. We will use this as a accomplishment for 2022, because it's been a lot of work.
A lot of work went into that. It's amazing that we got it done this quickly.
Yes, yes. Still a lot to do, but still a lot of breeze fixes we're working on, but it's all in process and moving forward. And that is the end of my report.
All right, thank you, Christy. Let's move to item number 7, the appointment of committee members to the standing committees. A couple of things on this. You know, with Jackie leaving, she was head of the Health and Safety Advisory Committee. I suppose we would want to have on each committee at least 3 members of the board that can do it. There's evidently one board member who's very unpopular. No one wants to serve with him. It's the Steve Weeks one. No, so I guess we have to worry about replacing Jackie on the one committee. And Danielle, is there any committee that you see here you would like to sign up for and get involved with?
Well, I'm happy to serve where you have the least amount of open. Thank you. I'm happy to serve where you need folks to be, and then maybe offline I can ask you about what each of them do.
Okay.
But I'm interested in the ones where you need folks to help.
Maybe helping on enforcement and inspections?
Yeah. Chat with me, and I'm happy to
Thank you, I appreciate that. And we all kind of like to also roll into the Disciplinary Review Committee, because sometimes it's difficult in getting 3 of us together on that. So that would be, especially for a new board member, it's great learning curve to understand our laws and regulations, and it's a good committee to serve on. I'm not being too Tom Sawyer, am I? Yeah, so that would be great if you could do that too.
Okay.
Also on enforcement and inspections, I'd love to have a licensee on that. Yeah, all the eyes are suddenly looking to the table down there.
And Derek pushed his chair back like, No, I actually was going to volunteer too. I mean, I did count Derek's on 4. I guess I could match that energy a
I was
little
going to
bit.
suggest that I go off of disciplinary review and go on to the other group.
Oh, no, you can't get off. Just
Oh, no, that's impossible. You're on that for life. For life.
And honestly, for disciplinary review, we really like to we kind of make everybody just be on it, because we can always, you might be able to serve, there's 3 days. So you might be able to make 1 day, and then we can call somebody else to maybe make 1 day, or you might be able, so we, as staff, we're extremely flexible.
Yeah, I'll take enforcement and inspections.
Enforcement inspectors, so there'd be 4 of us, right? Okay, that's great.
How we go from 1 Where did we get a 4?
Oh, no, I'm sorry, 3rd. Tanya's already on. Myself, Tanya, and Danielle.
Yeah.
Okay. Was I having myself?
Twice. And again, we'll be getting new board members.
And health and safety, does someone else, would they like to join health and safety to get us up to 3?
I'd be okay joining that one too.
Okay, you would join, okay. Terrific. Okay. Any other people have any other interest in any other committees they'd like to switch or get involved with that they aren't involved with now? Crickets. Okay, thanks, guys. Thanks for everyone getting involved. The committees are really important. And I think you're going to see from now on a lot more committee work is going to be done than we did in the past. Now we have the bodies we're getting here, and we have the talent to do it, and it means that when it gets to the board, it's going to be a well thought out decision, and that's very important. So thanks for serving on these committees.
And I think with the 5 vacancies we have, as soon as those can get filled, we'll be able to fill up some of the committees even more and potentially take ourselves off some.
We'll visit it again when we get those in. All right. Let's move on to item number 8, a report on the June Health and Safety Advisory Committee, and, I'm sorry, and Christie's going to be giving that report today.
That'll be Jackie today.
Yeah, Jackie's not here.
So the Health and Safety Committee met on June 6, 2022, and just for some of our new members, in case you don't know, this committee exists members, but with members of the boards. We like to have around 3 members, but it also has members that the executive officer brings in as well. So we have members of each of our licensing categories. So it's actually a fairly large committee. So we have some industry experts that come in as well. So it is a little different than the other committees in the fact that there are outside people sitting on that committee as well. And other people from different agencies as well sit on that committee. And they're currently looking at the citations that one of the things in SB 803 is for us to look at citations and violations and determine the risk level and look at the consumer harm impact. So we put together a report for that, and in going through that, there's also, this committee has looked at health and safety regulations prior to SB 803 happening. So at our next committee meeting, we're going to bring back the revised regulations as well as the information on the violations, and the committee is going to kind of mesh those two things together and hopefully be able to possibly make a recommendation if we get through it. It's a big undertaking. That job is huge on that committee, because we're going to be looking at all of the health and safety regulations, how they were recommended to be updated, compared with the fines, to make sure the fines that we have and what we've discussed with risks and input that we've already received match up.
Is the early suggestion that the maximum fine would be $250 on any violation?
No.
I just said they're low risk, medium risk, and high risk.
The committee talked about certain risk levels for violations and making them more uniform. So like the violations that are all high risk, they should have the same amount of fine. So uniformity
an
is now-
unlicensed their fine could go down to just $250.
No, they didn't make that recommendation.
No, Steve, I believe those examples are for first offenses, and then second offense and third offense, the fine would increase. So
Okay, but don't we have some first offense fines that
Yes.
exceed $250?
Yeah, and the committee did not consider changing that.
Good.
But there's some that were similar. There's some violations that are similar, like if you had a cradle blade and if you had a needle. That's just an example. That's not it. But maybe those violations should be the same, and they might not have been. So it's looking at consistency.
Gotcha.
And we have a tentative meeting set for the health and safety in September. And again, it's a very big project. For those of you who are on that committee know what a big project it is. So I don't know that it will be ready for the board until maybe there might need to be 2 more committee meetings on that. We'll see.
Good progress. All right, and now let's go to Reese. You want to talk about what happened and give us an update on the Legislative and Budget Committee meeting.
Yes. Thank you. So our committee last met on June 13th. We didn't make any new recommendations to the board at that time. Listed on the page here are the bills that we are currently tracking. One change that did happen after the agenda was prepared, and that is AB 1661 has now been signed by the governor. This means that as of January 1, 2023, our licensed establishments will have to post information on human trafficking. We also, this isn't on this page either, but in agenda number 12, there was the passage of Senate Bill 189, which we'll talk about later, related to meetings in person and so forth. And additionally, we have a tentative schedule for an August meeting, particularly to focus on the budget, as we didn't talk about that last time. So.
Good. Thank you, Reese. Looks like you guys are doing some work there. It's wonderful. Derek, you want to talk about now, item number 10, the status of the Licensing and Examination Committee?
Sure. Thank you, Steve.
Of course.
Our committee met on June 13th, 2022. We had an extensive conversation regarding the Spanish pass rates. We will continue to monitor this, especially with the changing of these examinations that took place on July 1. We had discussed increasing the regulation over the extern program. At our next meeting, we will receive some recommendations from the staff to review. The committee did not make any recommendations to the board at that time. The Licensing and Examination Committee reviewed and discussed the Spanish language exam pass rates. Our EO, Christy, advised that she had been meeting with DAS, a Division of Apprenticeship Standards, and the Bureau of Private Post-Secondary Education, and that discussion was talking about sharing the data. Board staff are also working on a regulation package to update the requirements, but it's difficult as the board shares oversight and can only do what's within our current authority, statutory authority, excuse me. The committee discussed the low pass rates that may be due to the literacy issue. With the new PSI exam, the board will be able to see data on which content areas students are doing poorly, and then provide outreach on instructional strategies and guidance to those instructors and students. The committee also discussed the oversight of the externship program. The number of schools and establishments utilizing the externship program has increased. However, the board does not require schools to track extern hours, and the board does not know the students' names. More schools are providing externship agreements with nail salons that do not provide hair services. At the next meeting, the committee will review staff's recommendations regarding proposed changes to the externship program. The committee will also continue to discuss the Spanish pass rates. And that's it.
Thank you, Jared. Any questions? Yeah, of course.
Okay, so I'm interested in this. Do we have any interest in disaggregating the data of Spanish-speaking folks that are taking the test, to learn a little bit more about literacy levels, or how many folks are ESL? Are they passing the practical but not, I know there's no more practical, but, were they better at passing practical but not written? I don't know, are we interested in disaggregating this a little bit more?
They definitely were. That's been an issue for a long time, that they definitely did better in the practical portion. But you still had to pass the written portion to become licensed, but we used to be able to see both scores.
Okay, and then a follow-up to that, in terms of for our ESL speakers, even if, is there a different way to take the exam so it's not written? Because for folks that are, English is their second language, or they're coming from another country, and a lot of folks sometimes don't even go past third grade, but they can learn the content and pass the test. Are there other forms of giving the exam out instead of written?
There's not. I don't know how we would do that.
That's what I was asking about, disaggregating the data, how many folks are ESL, how many folks are citizens, how many came from other countries, because it all kind of matters.
Right, and the only way we get that information is if they request their exam in that language. We can track it by their application. So we don't get, and the application is really self-certify in a sense, other than if they've gone to a California school, they have to submit their proof of training, but they don't have to tell us if they were taught in Spanish, because we don't have any of that in our authority. So the only way we get data is because we input what language they want to take their exam in. That's it.
And then do we control for the actual literacy level? So if you don't meet a certain level, you can take your test another way?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, that goes back to my earlier question about grade levels for the written exams. So it's state mandated that they be at the 10th grade level?
It's a requirement in our law.
Okay, and has that ever been discussed about lowering that level?
No.
Okay, thank you.
And I did want to add one more item that we mentioned at this committee meeting, there was a joint letter that was developed among Division of Apprenticeship Standards, Bureau of Private Post-Secondary, and us, and that letter went out today, just hours ago. And it's super exciting step in the right direction for some of the apprenticeship programs that are charging way too much money to an apprentice, because BPPE does have a law that says if it's over $2,500 that you're considered a school. But a lot of these programs we found were charging up to $11,000 for an apprenticeship program. And flying under the purview of the Bureau of Private Post-Secondary. So we just sent a joint letter. We will forward that all to you later so you can see it. It took a lot to get the letter done, and we worked with the Director of Division of Apprenticeship Standards, the Bureau Chief of Private Post-Secondary, and it went through our Director's office, it went through our agency's office for review. So I'm pretty proud that we did that, and it's basically letting these apprenticeship program sponsors know that if you're charging $2,500 or more, you're a school, and you should fall under the requirements and guidance of every other private school that's out there. So that just went out this morning.
Christy, let me just say this, hats off to you for that project, because as you know, I'm all for the apprenticeship. I'm all for, the schools joining together. What the big, from an owner side and taking in these apprentices, hearing this disparity in the incomes and how different schools were charging, you can go to one school, if it's on this side of town, it was $2,500, but if it was on this side of town, it was $11,000. And hats off to you, because I knew when you said that project was taking place, I was like, ooh, how are they going to pull this one off?
I know.
Because the three agencies weren't working together.
Right.
So the fact that you guys were able to say, hey, it's not about us, let's get this together and come and work together to bring some uniformity to what we're trying to convey to the people who want to take these classes. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yes. Thank you. And the apprenticeship program is a great pathway to licensure, and there's some really good programs out there, but there's just unfortunately some really bad ones. Not necessarily saying bad, but they shouldn't be charging an apprentice $11,000 to be in their program.
What my follow-up question to all the kudos is, who's tracking that now?
Oh, we are.
Oh, okay, all right. So, because that's the next question, right? You send a letter out, and now it's enforcement. Like, how is that being tracked? And is that loophole missing? Because I think there was a loophole in the language that allowed this to happen. Is that correct?
Yes, and I think the loophole is, we could easily send a letter and not do anything about it again. But and again, we have this limited oversight, but we have a good relationship that we're building with the Division of Apprenticeship Standards, the Bureau of Private Post-Secondary. We are all in agreement that this has to be addressed. So if we have to do the legwork on following up with these programs that we already know are charging, then we will take that on, and we will. I will not rest.
It sounds like we need to have a committee for that, right?
All right, talk about committees. Let's move to, Tanya, you want to talk about Education and Outreach Committee and the new assignment you just gave yourself?
As if I don't have enough to do already, huh? Our committee met on June 13th. We reviewed all of the documents that the board sends out to various steps in the process. We also talked about ways on how to increase our outreach as a board. Staff will update us at our next meeting on plans to increase outreach on both the consumer side and for licensee. The Education and Outreach Committee reviewed and discussed the current materials the board distributes during establishments, licensing, and renewal issuance. Remember, we had a question about how do we know what is that track record? So thank you for that information. It was really, really good to kind of open our eyes to see what the consumer actually gets in this process. The committee members made recommendations on materials regarding language access, Committee members also suggested board staff to reach new technologies such as sending automatic text messaging, creating smartphone application, and creating TikToks targeted towards the consumer, right? So to heighten consumer awareness, because that's what the board is here for, to protect the consumer. The committee also reviewed recent and upcoming outreach events. The committee requested to have more outreach on personal service permit specific to consumers and licensee. Like, how does it affect both of them, and how are we getting the word out? Because if we're just reaching out to licensees, then the consumer is not aware. At the next meeting, the committee will review staff's future plans for outreach and education.
Thanks, Tanya. The committee is definitely doing some good things there. And it looks like they've already started the PSAs there.
Yes.
So that's good. All right. So we've just reviewed presentations from the Health and Safety Advisory Committee, the Legislative and Budget Committee, Licensing and Examination Committee, and the Outreach Committee. So at this point, I'd like to open the floor to any public comment regarding any of those reports that were just given. No report. No. Anyone wish to speak to that?
Or anything the executive officer reported on as well.
Yes, that's true. Okay, I guess not. Let's move on with our agenda, though. All right. Item number 12 is the discussion on our future board meetings regarding Senate Bill 189. And Christy, maybe you can brief us on that.
Yes. So super exciting because we had taken a support position on a different bill that actually didn't go through. So we were able to get the language in this bill. Our director worked very hard on this, I know, but this basically goes back to how we held meetings during COVID. So we can hold online meetings without having to post all your addresses of where you're located at. So it's really exciting. You all, if you were here, you know we had a lot of public participation in those meetings. And so that's certainly been a benefit. It's a benefit to the cost, as we mentioned earlier, because we don't have to travel. So what this discussion should be about today amongst the members is how we want to move forward. One of the things that we can do that we haven't done in the past, but I hear it's going well for other boards, is have a hybrid. And that is where we can allow both in-person and online, whether that's members, we could have the members all in person and have the ability for people to call in, or we can have members. Can we have some members at home and some members here? So a hybrid. We can do it both. So maybe you can't jump on a plane and fly up to Sacramento. I'm sure we'll all make San Diego though, right? So it's super exciting that we're going to be able to do this again. So I would open that up to discussion of the board of how they would like to see the meetings move forward. I know we've had our last two board meetings in person, and I think it's super helpful to have everybody together and to meet everybody in person. So it's something that the board can talk about if they want to, how they want to handle the upcoming year of board meetings.
I think for me, I know the energy is the energy is great meeting in person. Like I feel like I could feel the energy of not what is she about to say, but you feel that energy of whether you agree or disagree versus being on a hybrid. So I would definitely vote
I would agree with you there. I think that for the board meeting, I think it's good for us to be in person, have live board meetings. Not only it's easier for the public maybe, but as far as we're concerned, it breeds kind of a camaraderie here that allows us to be honest with each other and talk that we wouldn't be quite as honest or feel talking like that if we were on Zoom or something. I noticed that a lot of the LA City commission meetings, they do a hybrid. They usually have a live meeting with call-ins at the beginning and the end of those meetings. So I think expanding it to a live board meeting whenever possible and adding a call-in feature to that might be a good idea. It allows the public more participation is the bottom line to that.
I'd like to add, you mentioned LA, I'll mention San Francisco. I watched a board meeting a week ago, and one of the members had COVID and worked from home, but was still voting and taking part. I think that worked well. It didn't take him away from the board meeting or take away his vote. And I would just also say, we're going to talk about the strategic plan tomorrow, but there was some recommendations from our stakeholders in that related to the fact that in-person was missed and that working from home, board meetings by Zoom and so forth were not as well received as working in person. And so I would just say that, that's something that I value being here in person for both board and committee meetings, but I do think it's welcomed to, if someone can't make it, that they be able to hybrid in. Yeah.
Well, it looks like there's 3 types of meetings that we have to discuss. Our board meeting, how that's the options for that, our committee meetings for the option of that, and lastly, our DRC meetings. And we've done some experimentation on the DRE side. That really didn't work well over the phone. And I felt that the people probably weren't adequately given the consideration they could have been given had they openly been in a meeting here. We even experimented on just reading letters from the people in a written meeting, and I think that's difficult too. So I think that the DRC would be something we'll probably always have to just do in person. It'd be difficult for us to coordinate 180 people to attend the Zoom meeting. It would be staff-wise impossible.
Agreed.
So that could maybe stand alone. When it comes to subcommittee meetings, how do we want to, your recommendation is the subcommittee meetings also be in person?
I do too.
I think that's helpful. I think to the extent that if, obviously we have travel issues and sometimes our committee can't get a quorum because we don't have enough people. So obviously a hybrid may work very well, but I do think having an established location where the committee members can meet and potentially travel to, I think is useful and helpful.
Do we, just be a devil's advocate, should we say something along the lines that it would be a live meeting if we if the people that made up the quorum were in person and the other people beyond the quorum maybe could Zoom in as an option? I mean, put some restriction on how that would be used. Same with the board, I guess.
And if I can chime in here real quick, as a reminder, there's only 2 locations right now where we can do a hybrid meeting. So when you're in San Diego, you cannot do a hybrid meeting just yet. If something like this eventually passes into some permanent statute, then we are already looking at Southern California or other locations where we can have that technology. But right now it's this room and the room across the parking lot.
So it's only in Northern California?
Go ahead.
So there's not an option for hybrid in Burbank?
Correct. Right, because of the WebEx capabilities.
For the main location. So we could be here and you could still be in your hometown.
Right.
What does it do to our expenses to add a hybrid meeting? I mean, is the board charge any more for staffing to give us the technology to do that?
No.
We save money on travel if staff doesn't travel.
That's true.
Right.
That's true. We'd save money on travel.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, you can direct the staff to play it by ear. Perhaps if you get, maybe Tanya's not feeling well, or maybe she has a tight, I use you as an example, or Reese, has tight scheduling issues, and maybe you play it by ear on each meeting on whether or not they.
Our committees, since we're really getting into the committee aspect that we haven't done before. We try to just touch base with all the committee members, and everybody's been pretty flexible if they have a conflict. So we can usually work with we usually try to go first to the committee chair, get that set, and then, check with the other members to make sure that they can usually work it out.
In a board meeting situation, if we had one board member say that was not here that wanted to zoom in on that, how does the technology work? Do we as board members see the Zoom screen, or does it come in as an audio signal only?
No, it would be WebEx, if I understand correctly. So it would be just like in our COVID meetings that we had, but you could be at your home, and Tanya could be here with us in Sacramento, and Reese could be here with us.
But as the people that are here in Sacramento, would they get to physically see a video of the person there, or would they just hear the audio?
I can answer you.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
Perfect.
Use your microphone.
You've been wanting to say that for the longest time, haven't you?
So what we do, we have the screens down, and then we connect WebEx through the screens. So whoever is not in the room and is talking, he's out of town, so he opens his computer, he turns his camera on, so we see him here. So the only two places we have, like Sabina explained, it's here and across the street.
So we would see a visual of our member that was at home.
Whoever is not in person.
Okay, good. Good.
And you would also have a moderator, just like if you recall, we had
Right.
those very pleasant voices who helped us through our meetings. We would still have that, and Cesar or someone else here to facilitate the whole process also on the ground for whoever's here. I've done some hybrids.
Okay, good. What are the boards doing generally on this as they're being heard on this? Do you know?
The other boards?
Other boards.
I've been hearing good things about the hybrids.
And they've been going the same general direction, hybrid, as far as the board meeting is concerned?
Yeah, I really recommend our board meetings be in person.
Right.
I do think that there are certain things that make sense for, as we mentioned, DRC, that absolutely should be in person. I think there's a lot of value in the main board meetings also being in person, but for subcommittees, given the fact that so many of us are on so many different committees, I think scheduling is getting harder and harder. And so I would like to see at least a hybrid version for the subcommittees, just because, each of us is on at least 2 to 3 committees. And the pattern that we've been having is we've been needing to have committee meetings every few weeks, and so that is pretty cumbersome in terms of travel and making arrangements. But being able to come in or appear virtually for a few hours, I think that would really enable us to meet as often as we need to.
Right. I would agree with that.
Mm-hmm. Right.
That one poor guy that's on the committee by himself, he's had to wear different clothing at different cameras to make it so that they appear like 3 different people being there. Okay, so what we're talking about is we're going to go with the board meeting live. Would there ever be an emergency where that wouldn't happen, where...
Well, if you also have a hybrid meeting, for example, if you get sick,
Right.
or you can't travel even the day of,
Right.
and you can't make it, you'll still be able to participate from home in that situation. So
Without the notification or anything else,
Right, so it's a great situation regardless.
Okay, so it'd be an emergency fallback for not being here, okay? And then the subcommittees would be a complete option to the subcommittees to meet either in person or have a at-home meeting supplemented.
Right.
And DRC would be strictly in person as we see it now.
Right.
Okay.
Do we need a motion, or is that just recommendations?
I don't think we need a motion.
Good. Okay. All right, that was good. And item 13, regarding rulemaking proposals. Christy, you're going to give us an update on this?
So we do have 2, and I wanted to introduce Christy. We call her Christy S. Christy, can you say your last name for us?
Hello. I'll introduce myself. My name is Christy Shields.
My name is Christy Shields. I'm an attorney with the Department of Consumer Affairs. I'm currently assigned to do regulatory review work for this board. I've been with the department since 2000, and I've worked with probably about half of the boards in the department as board counsel, but right now my role is to do review of regulatory text for all the clients in the department, but for your board to do the primary work of preparing and helping prepare text for administrative review by the department and the control agencies. So,
Hopefully our
nice to meet
resolution,
all of you.
we don't come to you too clumsy on our resolutions.
We
You corrected if that's the case.
Oh, no.
She does. It's very helpful, very, very helpful. And we don't have a regulations analyst right now, and haven't for a while. It's a very hard position to fill because regulations are, I think they're fun. Allison, who's been doing them, does not. So they are. It's a hard position to fill throughout the entire department. But we are so thankful to have Christy as our regulations analyst because we've already learned so much that it's been this, one of the biggest packages that we're working on right now is the apprentice regulations that is a huge package, and our board hasn't seen a lot of big packages like this, so when we work with people that really know what they're doing, it's just very enlightening. So it's been quite the process. So thank you for your help. And I know in the past we've talked about that the DCA has a regulations unit that looks at all of our regulations. So our unit is Christy. So Christy S, Christy U.
I know every time I hear the word Christy, I go, oh.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and give you an overview. We have two motions that we will need from the board today, and they are in your agenda packet. So our first item is the transfer of credit. This is for when the regulations on when, say, a cosmetologist who now wants to become a barber, what amount of credit they can transfer from one course to another, or manicurists to cosmetologists. It answers all those questions of what credit can be transferred. The board originally approved the amendments back in January of 2022, and then we work with Christy, who makes it much better for us, and the whole goal is to get regulations to the Office of Administrative Law with the most success we can possibly get. So that's why they've created the regulations unit, and we have an assigned attorney just to look at our regulations, and we're the lucky ones who got somebody who has a lot of DCA experience. So
does this also include transfer of credit on out-of-state applications?
It does not.
Okay, that would be separate.
Right. The out-of-state licensees go through a whole different process. So with that, we have included the language that's in here, and there is highlights. The changes were minor to the wording, significance to the meaning. And so we've changed some mays to shall. So again, you've seen this language back in January. We've now perfected this language. We would need a motion for the board to approve this to continue with the process. That we would want that motion to be very specific. It is listed in your agenda packet if a member so wishes to make that motion.
It's under the action needed section of your memo.
Do you have to read the whole paragraph? Yes.
Yes, please.
I would move that we...
Did you want me to read it for you?
No, I can read it. I deserve it for speaking out. I would move to rescind the board's prior January 24th, 2022 motion and approve the proposed regulatory text for Section 950.10 as provided in the meeting materials. Direct staff to submit the text to the Director of the Department of Consumer Affairs and the Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency for review, and if no adverse comments are received, authorize the executive officer to take all steps necessary to initiate the rulemaking process, make any non-substantial changes to the package, and set the matter for a hearing if requested. If no adverse comments are received during the 45-day comment period and no hearing is requested, authorize the executive officer to take all steps necessary to complete the rulemaking process and adopt the proposed regulations at Section 950.10 as noticed.
Good job.
Thank you.
Second.
Yes. Okay, now we can move before we vote to a public comment on the motion then. Does anyone have any comment?
Am I on? Okay, cool. Hello, my name is Colette Kavanaugh, and I'm the BBC delegate for the Electrologists Association of California. My comment is in regard to Section 950.10, transfer of credits. It needs to specifically state that no other licensee can transfer credit hours into the electrology profession. Electrology has been a standalone license since 1939, with good reason. Before that, work was performed in ophthalmology offices. The essential functions electrologists perform are unlike any other professions. I'm a dual licensed esthetician and electrologist, and I can attest to the fact that the education is not comparable. In electrology school, we learn the practice of electrology through Arthur R. Hinkle's textbook, not Milady's or skincare, like the Department of Consumer Affairs website states for electrology education. Hinkle's book teaches us the theory behind electrology modalities in depth and how to apply those concepts as a skilled technician. The work we perform is invasive and needs to be in a controlled environment by a skilled technician. We insert a needle precisely into each hair follicle, and this skill takes hours of practice to do correctly. If you allow crossover, the consumer will pay the price for the lack of education. I brought pictures today of electrolysis and thermolysis skin damage for the board to see. Some of this work was performed by electrologists in unlicensed states and by California licensed electrologists. These images are just the tip of the iceberg, as many of us electrologists see this damage daily in our offices. Most of it is permanent disfigurement. Additionally, many electrologists, including myself, now contract with insurance companies, work with surgeons, endocrinologists, and other medical professionals. Many of our clients have polycystic ovarian syndrome, which requires us to work with clients' medical advisors and have knowledge of the medications they are prescribed. We remove hair for skin grafts to prepare clients for surgery, and many of us work with transgender clients as they prep for gender reassignment surgery. Unfortunately, due to the lack of skill, many transgender folks now have hair growing out of their surgical area, which causes them pain, trauma, and long-term medical issues. Again, the electrology profession needs to be mentioned as the only profession that other licensees cannot cross over into. We need more hours of education, not less, for the safety of the consumer. Lastly, there are fewer electrologists than other professions under BBC, but with the intricate work we perform below the epidermis and the medical component of our work, we require technicians that are highly skilled, educated, and understand that the work they perform is invasive and can have lasting adverse effects on the client and the public. Thank you.
Thank you for making the presentation. Yep. Anyone else would like to comment? All right, let's resume our discussion then. We have a motion on the floor, and I'm not going to restate it, in which we've moved. Is there there's a second to it?
Christy.
Okay.
I just wanted to clarify for the board's information that Business and Professions Code Section 7367 requires the board to grant credit for training that's identical. So if the person presents training that's identical, the board shall grant the credit. We don't have any discretion to disregard, but it will be up to the schools to determine what is identical, correct? So I don't think there's any discretion to not grant credit when it's identical instruction. So the question is, what is identical? And we've defined that in the regulation. We've given parameters, but the schools will make those decisions when they provide their proof of training for any hours that they grant credit to a student for transfer. So I just wanted you to have that information.
We vote on this.
Is there, can I
All
say?
right, so we've...
Oh, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Is there a guideline for what's identical? Because I could say, and I'm just using this as an example, cosmetologists and hairdresser, like hair. So I want to be clear that are they saying esthetician versus, I don't know. I just want to be clear that the wording is identical to what the training is.
So identical, we kind of use the dictionary definition for identical, which is the same. So if you look at subdivision A, proposed 950.10 on page 2 of the memo that you got, it says a student changing from one program of instruction to another shall receive credit for prior hours of technical and practical instruction earned in another program on an hour-for-hour basis if the following requirements are met. The prior instruction hours earned by the student are identical, which means instruction is of the same duration and covers the same content as that being offered by the new program. So it's going to be it's going to be a case-by-case assessment by the school as to whether the same content is covered.
Okay.
And whether they can grant credit in accordance with this regulation.
Because you know what loopholes are, right?
I do, but it's really difficult to go through and have the board analyze that. It's going to be a case-by-case assessment.
Thank you
based
so much.
upon the general parameters of the rule, the standard that's been set is same duration and same content. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
I have another question. So are there any concerns that have been raised related to what doesn't cross over? And how have we addressed those? As for something that's not identical.
So SB 803 took 4 of our license types, cosmetology, barbering, aesthetics, and manicuring, and rewrote the curriculum and made it identical. Okay, so you have 100 hours in haircutting. In barbering is written now in statute the same as it's written in cosmetology. So if you look at our regulation language, we spelled it all out in the attachment here on pages, starts with page 2. So it's spelled out what can be transferred to what. If you're enrolling in a skincare program, you only get the hours from a cosmetology program that are listed in statute as exactly the same. Now, schools have that jurisdiction or authority within their school. For instance, 200 hours of instruction in chemical hair services. We don't go on to list all those types of chemical hair services, but we list 200 hours of chemical hair services. So those 200 hours can be transferred from one to another. Now, a school has the right to say, your 200 hours don't match my program of 200 hours, but I'll give you 150. And that's they list that on their proof of trainings if they do that, and that's within their right to do that. But it still has to be identical to what they would have taught in their own curriculum.
And then I just want to point out that what the staff have done here is to try to map out where these different licenses overlap in program content so that it makes it easier for people to figure out what would be transferable. So that's what subdivisions B through E, I think.
Have we heard any concerns from any of the
B through E.
Industries about, similar to the ones we've heard about electrology? Have we heard any other?
So keep in mind, this is not new. They've always transferred hours. This is just clarifying it in regulation. With our statute that says like for like can be transferred has been in existence for years and years and years. So what we're doing is we used to have language in our regulations that was very, very specific, and we crossed that out and made it clear because the statute from SB 803 rewrote all of our curriculums. So schools are doing this right now. To electrology, no. Electrology is not in this regulation package right now because it was not brought up in SB 803. So their curriculum is not up for that right now in this regulation. Now there is a bill, 2196, I believe. Is that correct, Allison?
I believe so.
where they did look at the electrology curriculum, but that bill hasn't been signed yet. So if they sign that bill, then we're going to probably we'll have to do regulations for that bill in general, and then we would have to discuss the issues that's been raised about electrology. Because obviously we would, the practice of electrology, the actual service of electrology is not going to transfer over anywhere. But there could be some health and safety that would.
Christy, you've given broad hours on curriculum, 200 hours, 150, whatever it may be. Is it public record as to the exact curriculum of each school?
The schools have submitted their curriculum, and that's what it would say. So they would say 200 hours of chemical services, and then they would say, and here's our lesson plan for everything we're doing under that.
Is that public record, or is that something the public can easily see?
Not from us, but from the Bureau of Private Post-Secondary. That's all information that has to be on a school website or in their school catalog and things like that.
And to your other point, this is the motion include the approval for it to go through the process, which include a 45-day public comment period. So that's when we're going to hear from our industry, our stakeholders, or additional public comment. If there are comments, and you'll see them, they'll come back before the board as well.
That's really helpful, thank you, because I think there will be comments coming from industry as well as potential licensees or so forth. So that will be helpful to get that 45 days worth of comment to our next discussion. Thank you.
All right, so we have a motion on the floor. It's now time to vote. So will someone do the roll of the
Can you do it loud?
Yeah, I have a loud voice. Is that loud enough?
Yes.
I think just the microphone, it's not the voice, it's the microphone. You don't use the microphone.
It's not recorded. Got it.
Steve Weeks,
Yes.
Karen Pham. Yes. Megan Ellis,
Yes.
Tanya Fairley,
Yes.
Reese Isbell,
Yes.
Yolanda Jimenez,
Yes.
Derek Matos,
Yes.
Danielle Munoz.
Yes.
Thank you.
So the motion passes unanimously. The motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Now to the second action needed.
Okay, our second action that we are in need of is instructional materials. So this, again, is a regulation package that the board has probably seen a few times. We made it all the way to the Office of Administrative Law, and the staff at that office had some corrections, additions that they would like us to make. So this final package was filed with the Office of Administrative Law in March. We withdrew that package because we needed to make their changes. So we have a prepared motion. We've listed the changes that we've had to make. We deleted the appropriate and replaced that with a current version of any. You might be helped to look at the actual language.
Licensing Examination Translation Guide.
On page 2 is the actual changes that we've made to this language. So this is requiring that schools provide a textbook to their students, the laws and regulations, and a version of the translation guide from the examination company. And we have a motion listed in your agenda item.
Anyone want to read a motion?
Okay, I'll do it.
Thank you.
I move to direct staff to take all steps necessary to complete the rulemaking process, including preparing modified text for an additional 15-day comment period, which includes amendments discussed at this meeting. If after the 15-day public comment period, no adverse comments are received, authorize the executive officer to make any non-substantive changes to the proposed regulations before completing the rulemaking process, and adopt Section 961 of the proposed regulations with the modified text.
Have a second?
Second.
Okay. All right, so we have a motion and a second. Do we have public comment on this? It doesn't appear that we have any public comments, so let's go to a board vote on this.
Steve Weeks?
Yes.
Kelly Mayfield?
Yes.
Megan Ellis?
Yes.
Tanya Ferry?
Yes.
Reese Isbell?
Yes.
Yolanda Jimenez?
Yes.
Derek Matos?
Yes.
Danielle Munoz?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, so the motion passes. And lastly, I will just give some updates on some regulation packages that we're working on. We have our SB 803 cleanup language. Those are currently being reviewed at the Department of Consumer Affairs, actually with Christy, but we just gave them to her and they're very extensive. Our apprenticeship programs is something as I mentioned earlier, we've been working on that quite extensively and are continuing to work on that to get it into a format that will hopefully make it through the entire process. But those are very, very detailed and long regulations. So those we are working on. The others are on hold. Our extern language, we're waiting for our bill that's going through the process right now to be updated. That will, they left out barbers out of SB 803 for externs, so we've got that in the language to be cleaned up, and then we'll be able to clean up those regulations for externs. And then also the Disciplinary Review Committee. This may be something we might want to put on our next board agenda to actually discuss if the board would still like to move forward with this regulation package. This was adding non-members to the Disciplinary Review Committee. Maybe you want to think about that again now that we'll have 15 members on our board.
Exactly.
And then we do have our disciplinary guidelines that we are continuing to work on as well. So no motion needed on any of that.
Christy, a question for you. Do you do exclusively... I'm sorry, can you hear me?
Christy, this one.
This Christy, yeah. Do you do exclusive work for our board on the regulatory packages, or do you work with other boards at the same time?
I work with 37 other boards.
How many?
37.
They don't pay you enough.
No, I know. I kind of wonder if I should have taken this job. But yeah, I mean, the benefit to that is that I can get to see issues that come across other boards' packages, which is why we brought that.
It's an advantage to both all boards.
Right.
Yeah.
So we're able to see where there are issues that are being flagged by our control agencies. And just for the members' edification, in case you didn't know, we have the board is the rulemaking authority by law, but all the rulemaking packages also have to go through by law the director of the Department of Consumer Affairs review and approval, Department of Finance, a Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency, which is the cabinet level agency above our agency, Department of Consumer Affairs, and then finally the Office of Administrative Law. So we see from control agency to control agency trends and things that tend to come up with other boards packages, and I'm able to help you work on those issues that I see that they're flagging before it happens to you. And that's one of the reasons why we brought back the transfer of credit package, because there were the may to shall, because OAL doesn't like that word may very much. They want to know if you're going to apply in every case or if you're going to have criteria that would trigger the may to be implemented. So that's the kind of thing that I would bring back to the board to make sure that we hopefully can get through the review the first time around.
That's a great advantage to us. Okay, are we moving on with the agenda now? Let's go to public comment. Is there any public comment on any items that were not on the agenda today that the public would like to comment on?
Hi, everyone. Wendy Cochran, California Aesthetic Alliance. First, I'd like to thank the board for working with us with regard to the tinting issue. And as soon as we know that there is more than one tint that is currently allowed for us, those that can tint, so barbers, cosmos, estheticians, thankfully. When there is more than one tint on the market, we will definitely be letting you know, but we thank you very much. I would like to point out, since you kind of started another conversation about allowing the schools to make the determination as to what hours are being transferred. I've had several conversations with estheticians this month or so, pending recession. They want to expand what they can do. They are thinking of going back to cosmetology schools. And right now, the popular response from cosmetology schools is that none of their hours as licensed estheticians are going to be transferred over to their cosmetology thing because it's only 1,000 hours now. So I have one text that I was sent Sunday evening that said, thank you for the information. We don't currently accept transfer hours into the cosmetology program, and this is to an esthetician that has been licensed for over 20 years. So they're not going to accept our experience as licensees and transfer those hours because they have the discretion to do that, and that just tells me that the fox is running the hen house. And that says right now that they're like, yeah, no, it's only 1,000 hours, so we're not going to accept it, and here's it's $18,000 for you to do this program plus your kit plus your application. If you allow the schools to make this determination as to what hours, they will do it, and they will tack on that monies onto the fees. And as an esthetician, why would I have to go to a cosmetology school to redo my aesthetics education if I've already done it and I've been a licensee for 20 plus years? That makes no sense to me. So if you allow the schools to have that latitude to decide what hours transfer or not, there goes all your barrier to entry. And that was a lot of what was going on in SB 803. But this is not an unusual conversation for me to get from other estheticians that are trying to go back. They're like, when's the hair thing going to be ready? Because they want to go back and do hair cutting, they want to do color, they want to do extensions and things like that because they want to make sure that, you know, if they start seeing a decrease in their number of clients, that they get through to it. But right now, the schools are using the excuse of the programs are only 1,000 hours now, so we're not going to let you skate on any of the repeat hours that you already have in your previous license. So just think about that when you make your decisions because, again, if SB 803 and all the changes, wonderful, wonderful changes that we made, all of it was about barrier to entry. And now this 1,000-hour program thing is being weaponized against us. And it's not fair to the licensees that want to obtain a second license. Okay, so thank you very much.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to make a comment? Not hearing anyone else. Let's move to item 15, suggestions from board members for future agenda items. Anything that you would like to... Chrissy, we were just talking about something I lost my mind with bringing about for future agenda items.
DRC regs.
Yes, DRC. Yeah. Okay. Anything else that we should, that the individual board members would like to bring up as any items? I don't think this is a fixed time for this. I think any time during the next, prior to the issuance of what our...
Yeah, that's public too. And Christy has her hand up. Christy?
Yeah.
So, I mean, if AB 2196 goes through as it's currently looking like it's going to do, the pre-apprenticeship training hour issue looks like you'd need regs for that. So, potentially something... Pre-apprenticeship training hours?
Well, what we would do is put together an implementation plan for that bill.
Okay, but I just wondered if potentially regulations for AB 2196 might be something you want to put on the agenda for a future meeting.
A lot in there.
There's a lot of areas that are looking a little ambiguous in that bill. So.
All right, thank you. And I apologize in one sense. This has been a 4-hour board meeting. The time just flew by for me at least, and we probably should have had a break in between to make it easier for everyone. So thanks for bearing with us on the time frame of all of this. Oh, would the public like to comment on any future agenda items?
Wendy Cochran, California Aesthetic Alliance. I understand in the future that we are going to want to see SDS sheets. on all of our materials that are in our treatment rooms, including in the color rooms and barbering and manicuring and all that stuff. Currently, in our group, we've asked people to do kind of a best practices exercise and go to their manufacturers and ask for SDS sheets on the products that we use. So peels, cleansers, masks, things like that. And we are getting responses from the manufacturers that say you don't need those. And we are not going to give them to you. And so I have big concern because I know in the future, in health and safety, that we are talking about requiring SDS sheets for all of our chemicals, which we don't know what is considered hazardous. I'm sure if, somebody's kid was, our backs were turned while we're doing lashes and somebody was in the room and drank a bottle of retinol, that would be hazardous. So you would want to have an SDS sheet on something like that. Currently, from the manufacturers, we're getting pushback saying that they don't need to provide us with that information. And so we need to have assistance somehow from the board or from someone. My conversations with Cal OSHA have gone to a dead stop because we are not employees largely in our industry. So we are all solo acts. So if I'm a lash artist and I'm in the room and I don't have an SDS for that bottle of vitamin C that somebody's kid got into, I think that's kind of dangerous. And we need some assistance in making sure that the manufacturers that provide our products are actually giving us these SDS sheets. Just because they don't think that a cleanser is not hazardous, it actually is if somebody consumes it. And they don't give it back to us because we're not an employee-based industry. So OSHA can't come in and they can't enforce this. So I just want to make sure that you all understand this as an issue that is coming up in our industry and coming from the perspective of compliance and wanting to do best practices and making sure that we have all these materials and this information in our treatment rooms. If something were to happen, somebody was to have a reaction, we want to have these SDS sheets in our rooms. But the manufacturers are currently not providing them to us without any real pushback. So I just want you all to know that this is an issue. And if you have any brainstorms as to how you would like to handle this in the future, since you are going to require us to have SDS sheets in our treatment rooms, we need some help. Thank you.
All right, that being the end of our public comment and a long day for board and staff and everyone involved here, without objection, we are adjourned.
And just a reminder, 9 o'clock tomorrow.
9 tomorrow.
Here, right
here. Thank you.